Hello and welcome to another edition of the Sensibly Speaking podcast with your host, Chris Shelton. Hey, everybody. As you can see, we are jumping right into part 2 of my interview with Katherine Olson, who is a former Sea Org member as of about a year ago or
almost
so.
exactly a year ago.
Yeah, you took off.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you were
It's
like,
going to be
this.
a year that I left on June 11th.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Oh.
Yeah, we are coming up on that.
That's right.
Okay, good. So we are getting a fresh perspective, you could say, on what life is like in the Church of Scientology and in the Sea organization, which is that group that you signed the billion-year contract for. Now, we did a part 1 on this and posted it last week, and we went for almost 3 hours. We were really, when you tell somebody's full story, there's a lot to tell, right? And in all fairness, when I was interviewed myself and I sat down and told my entire story beginning to end, it was 12 hours of video. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah. I mean, when I really went into detail, right? So it's understandable that these things take a little bit of time. I wanted to address a couple things from part 1 just to kind of throw out there that, the sort of casual conversational tone of our first part was by design. I purposefully was not interrupting Katherine as often as I maybe used to when I was interviewing people, because I wanted to kind of have it be more of a free flow thing, but I understand. See, I also did that because I thought that my audience was already super familiar with all the terminology and language and concepts of Scientology, because I've covered it so many times over the years in so many different formats. But that's my bad. I need to recognize that I got new viewers coming all the time, and it's on us to explain what we're talking about.
Yeah. So
we do need to do that. And unfortunately, Scientology as a topic or subject is an incredibly language intensive. There's a thing called loaded language. And it's one of the control mechanisms or characteristics of a thought reform or a high control culty kind of situation. Is they mess with the language. They redefine words, they redefine terms, they come up with new ones. There's a shitload of acronyms and slanguage, and because a cult, let's all remember, is a culture. That's where it comes from.
Yeah. And
cultures are defined by their mannerisms, language, customs, dress, right? That's what makes a culture. It's a bunch of people who, this is how we all get along. And this is how we understand each other. And so Scientology is its own little bubble world. And there's a ton of language. And one of the challenges in leaving Scientology is actually getting used to not using that language. But sometimes in the course of talking about Scientology and what we experienced in it, we have to use the language. There's just no other way around it.
Especially if you're talking to someone who is in for a long time.
Exactly.
There's only one way to explain something. Well, there's probably more than one way to explain something, but the easiest way to explain it is to use the terms and
exactly.
Whatever, yeah.
And when you were referring to things like stativ, right?
Statistical evolution. You're like, what's an evolution?
Exactly, right? And of course, it's a military term. Hubbard borrowed it from the Navy, but it's a progression of events that lead to a specific end result, right? In terms of how we used it. And the stativ, it was every Thursday, every week. It was, getting all the statistics in from all over the world, because that was part of your job for a good long time, right? So we talk about stuff like that. Kind of no other way to get around that. We got to have to name it what it is, right? But it's not on you to just figure all this stuff out. We will try to do better to define these things as we're going. Without, doing it while at the same time doing our best to not try to make this, audiobook index, right, or glossary or something, right? We're trying to tell a story here. So that all being said, we will try to show more care in that. And otherwise, I'm going to say that this is her story told by her. I will ask questions to clarify or whatever, but I'm not trying to dig up necessarily here at this go round every single little bit, because as you might notice, Catherine's local and we can always have her
That's
back.
right.
So, telling a story is not necessarily the be all end all. There are lots of things that we can do in terms of future content to focus in on certain aspects of this as well. And we have the freedom to do that. So
Yeah.
that all being said, I just kind of wanted to intro with all of that to address some of the comments. But welcome back
Thank
to
you.
the show.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And also, I really need to say that it needs to be acknowledged that taking off after 26 years.
Yeah, well, it's almost 27 in the Sea Org.
Wow.
Yeah. Somebody actually corrected me on that
Okay.
when they heard my video. It's like, wait a second. No, it was 27 years and you were in Scientology for 29 years because I started in Scientology in 1992. And then I joined the Sea Org in April 1994. So it was actually almost 27. So I was I was actually past my 27-year anniversary.
Damn.
When I left.
Damn. Wow. Because I was 8 on staff, 17 in the Sea Org, but if I had to time it, it would go back to when I was 4. But really, you were in way longer than I was in terms of your Sea Org experience, right? And also, one of the other key differences between us is the fact that you didn't necessarily grow up with it, but when you got in, you got in.
Yeah, I was in.
Yeah,
all the way.
You dived all the way in, and
Yeah.
even when and it kind of surprised me. I didn't realize that your mom had left halfway through and was trying to actively get you out.
Yeah, she was trying a lot. I found out a lot more once I left.
I'll bet.
Like what she was doing and stuff.
All right, so we need to. We're going to pick it back up with where we left off last time, and you had described. What we have come to know through Tony Ortega's reporting and through other things we've also been hearing over the last couple of years, this chase wave, this basically massive credit card fraud that was nationwide, here in the United States, and the fact that, and I've got other sources, and so does Tony, of course, in terms of breaking all this down and what it's meant for Scientology kind of internationally. And we've heard some very interesting things.
Oh yeah, it was definitely international. It was
international.
It was definitely international because
I wondered about that aspect of it.
Because when they sent different projects out, finance projects out, they went all over the place.
All over.
Yeah.
Okay.
They went to every single org, every single CLO, everywhere.
Excuse me. I wondered about that because we had talked about the fact that Los Angeles Church of Scientology, the Los Angeles org, is the model org, a continental org, the org that is supposed to be the place that other orgs emulate.
Yeah.
Right. And orgs being the Scientology moniker for an organization, because they don't call them churches. They are technically churches, but they don't call them that. They call them
sometimes due to the public, to very new public, or when they're doing some PR thing or whatever, they'll talk about it as a church, but otherwise, no.
Exactly. It's always so. And Scientologists don't talk about going down to the church.
Never say the church. No.
They always talk about the org.
Unless they're trying to defend it. If they're trying to defend it, then it's like my church, my religion, my,
Exactly.
That's the defense. Is that?
That's right.
Okay.
That's right. So that's kind of telling in itself. But this organization is supposed to be this model, and so staff who work for Scientology all over the U.S. and internationally, I guess, have come to Los Angeles over the last, we could say, 8-9 years. There have been various programs and activities that have called staff there to get trained up or apprenticed, was the big word they were using, on how to run an org, how to run a church. And this is the city level churches. This is Denver. This is Milano's, New York. This is Los Angeles. It's not the Sea Org bases, the big blue buildings and all that. That's Sea Org. Here we're talking about the city level churches, and Los Angeles represents the ultimate in what those are supposed to look like. Well, until they engage in massive credit card fraud, right? Which is what we've uncovered. And there have been a number of people who have, including you, coming out and talking about this in detail, in such detail.
Yeah, because I kind of saw it from the inside, but it was
Right.
very, very inside. Because if you, I was thinking about this the other day. If you talk about like Scientology being a bubble world, and then you go into the further bubble, which is the Sea Org, and then you go into the further bubble, which is management.
Yep.
So you're like a bubble within like 5 bubbles.
Exactly.
Or at least 3.
No, very much
Yeah.
so. Very much
Yeah.
so. And this speaks to the, sort of the information control, the sort of siloed kind of thing that goes on in these groups. And believe me, folks, it's not just Scientology that operates this way. You are going to find, if you dig into the details of the Jehovah's Witnesses, the Mormons, the Moonies, any of these kind of infamous cultic groups that have been around for years and years, you're going to find all kinds of nefarious and criminal kinds of activity going on that are kept, under wraps, that are kept under, because it's criminal,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
the more people who know, the worse things get.
Right.
And this, unfortunately, was a criminal activity that just was propagating all over the place in the world of Scientology fairly recently.
Mm-hmm.
And this is history repeating itself with Scientology. This is far from the first time that there's been gross financial irregularities, as they call them. We call them crimes. They call them
Right.
financial irregularities. Language, right? Phrasing. But it's all about that. So we were going into the details about that. You had laid out how people were getting, there were false loan applications or fraudulent applications or efforts. There were also, I've been emailed and told verbally by a couple other folks that there was all kinds of shenanigans being pulled here. Not only was Chase as a company being defrauded by Scientology with false applications, and apparently Navy Credit and a few other places, but they were also arranging where Scientologists would cover other Scientologists.
Right. Yeah, that was a big thing.
Right? And
Yeah,
this
that
was
a
called
big thing.
bridging.
Yeah, that's right.
This was the latest term for it. There used to be other terms for it. But this idea of covering for a person like, okay, I put in for $30,000 worth of credit. I'm waiting for the applications to be approved. I've already been approved for 10 or 20 or whatever. So it's absolutely positively going to go through. And the salesperson wants the money now.
Right.
So I got an idea. Let's get Joe to front you the money. And when the money comes in on your new credit line, you'll pay him back.
Right. Yeah.
And then the money doesn't come in.
Right.
But
and then another thing they were doing is they were regging money from public, like massive amounts of money from public, just as like sort of a donation to the org. It wasn't under, and I got this from someone, from a former missionary, right?
Yeah, tell me.
So what she said was they were regging public to pay the org, but it wasn't IAS, it wasn't for a specific service, it wasn't IDOR fund. They were just regging money, and then they would take it and they'd kind of have that in like a pot or like however they did it. I don't know what account or what they put it under. They somehow put it under something in the finance system, right? I don't remember. I think it was like
an
special
advance
income.
payment. Oh, special income.
That's
there we
what
go.
it was. It was special income.
Right.
So then what they would do is they would use that to put staff onto various services so that they could count the hours of the VSD or whatever from those services instead of getting public onto more services. And she told me this because she was she was a missionary in one of the orgs in Australia.
Okay.
And it was like a protracted project mission, whatever. So she was there for a really long time. So then it was like, oh, do you want to go in session? And this is how it was set up. And she found out later. She didn't know it was being done that way. It was just like, oh, do you want to go in session? And then they're using that to
count the hours.
Yeah.
See, here's
the hours or delivery or whatever.
Right. And let me explain very quickly why that would be important or why that would matter. Like, why does it have to be that the staff can't go in session until somebody's paying money to some blank check, basically, like,
Right.
say, like, okay, well, here's this money and we're just going to put it in this special pot, is because the statistics, the measurement of the success of a Scientology organization is its statistics. and it keeps hundreds of them. Every single Scientology organization. This is how demand is created and pressure is put on the staff. Is those statistics numerically every week need to be going up. You need to be producing more this week than you were last week. All the statistics that count and matter in a Scientology organization are public-facing statistics. They are stats that represent delivery to the public, i.e., they are paid services. If the Scientology is not a charity. So when people come in for services, they pay for them. These are donations.
Yeah.
Well, the staff sign contracts of voluntary servitude to the organization, whether it's a billion-year contract or it's a 2.5 or a 5-year contract. These are the contracts that they sign, and by signing that, they agree that they will receive services for free, no charge. They're not going to be charged for them because they're working for Scientology. That's the exchange. That's what's supposed to happen. But you don't get any statistics out of that. So the staff can go in session with a trained auditor or go into the classroom and do classwork, but it doesn't count on any of the statistics because it's not paid for. So how do you solve this problem when there's no public coming in and nobody's paying for anything? You cannibalize the staff.
That's right.
And now this new wrinkle, let's get some public, because what would happen classically is the staff would pay out of their own pocket. They got a husband or a wife or a trust fund or however they're making money because they're not making it from the church. And they pony up and they'll pay for their own services. And this, of course, violates the entire point of the contract. But forget that. We want your money, right? So it's all about that money.
Yeah.
And when that money comes in, now that staff member can be counted on the same statistical measures that the paying public are counted
it's a paid
on.
service instead of
exactly. Yeah. And that's how you get those statistics up without having any public in your building. And let's harken back for just a moment, just because I love throwing L. Ron Hubbard into the middle of all this. Let's harken back to the reason for orgs. Do you remember?
Oh, I can quote it if you want to. What is it? It's the only reason orgs exist is to sell and deliver materials and service to the public and get in public to sell and deliver too.
That's right. The object is totally free beings.
Yeah, that's right. I forgot that part.
Then we memorized this. How did I know she was going to know that? Because we would chant it, right? Over and over and over again. The only reason orgs exist is to get in public. And yet, when the stats are going up and the money's coming in, who cares? Right? Because at the end of the day, this is the proof positive of what I'm always going on about. Scientology is a money-making scam. It's all about the money.
Yeah.
And this is proof positive. In what Catholic context could you imagine a Catholic bishop or priest paying out of his trust funds or paying out of, borrowing money, maxing out credit cards to pay the church, right? Under what circumstances would you see, bishops sitting down with congregants and going, we need the money, man,
Yeah, now it's just not about paying for services. It's about paying for the IES, ideal org fundraising.
Yes. Exactly. It's just money.
Yeah.
And any excuse. And all the literature, all the promo pieces, all the things that come out of Scientology these days, as we see on Mike Rinder's blog, on Tony's blog, all of it is all about money.
Yeah.
It's either about how to get you to make more money or how to get you to give us more money. All right. So that all being said, just wanted to kind of set that context here for this, because this is not like any other church. It's not like any other business.
Yeah.
It's the Church of Scientology. It's definitely its own damn thing. Mm-hmm. And this rapaciousness, this sort of vulture culture, was the term Mike came up with that I love.
Vulture culture
is very much alive and well in Scientology to this day.
Yeah.
And you're testifying to that. So please continue.
Good. So that was the whole Chase Wave financial. Okay, and that was going on. There was different aspects of that going on for months. There was like I said,
and this was up until 2019 that this kind of
this
blew up.
It started in 2019, right at the beginning of 2019. It was like February 2019 when that started, and it just went. It sort of went for months, as far as I could tell, because they were constantly, they were trying to get like more people in finance, more people sent out on projects, more people, just a whole thing.
And by this, you mean in February 2019 is when the cleanup operation started?
Yeah. Well,
Okay.
that's when I heard that everything had blown up.
Okay.
Like,
okay. Because it had been going on for years.
Yeah, but there was like some big blow up, and I don't know if that started in PAC or it may have started. I think in one of the orgs it started in, actually, and I mentioned this last week, was Cincinnati.
Right.
Because that was a big deal. The Edie Cincinnati Genie was brought to the ILO in LA for sex checking. Actually, the entire EC was brought to ILO.
Okay, good.
For
And
sex
since
checking,
we're dropping terms here, let me interject for just a second.
Sorry, go ahead.
Well, what she's basically saying is that the entire command structure, or the senior executives of the Cincinnati Church of Scientology, were removed and brought to Los Angeles, where there is the International Liaison Office, ILO. That's middle management, upper management. That's basically where Scientology management is happening these days. Because as we talked about last week, and as I've covered before, the up Scientology has been dismantled by Scientology. It's just not even there anymore. That whole video I made describing the entire structure of Scientology management, that really only exists on paper these days. That's not really how it's structured. And as I went over in that video, Miscavige cut the knees out from under that thing years and years and years ago.
Yeah.
Excuse me. So when situations blow up like this, though, somebody has to deal with it. The people who deal with it are the people who are left in that middle management area, who are basically charged with running Scientology internationally now. At Miscavige's direction, or RTC's direction, or whatever directions they get from mucky mucks. So here, right, this big blow up happened. Now we know or have heard that Miscavige maybe saw this in Los Angeles, but we also have word from you and from others that perhaps this started in Cincinnati with an inspection.
I think that was one of the places it started, just due to the fact that was those executives from the org were brought there, and they were there for months. Like I was still the deputy chief steward, which meant I was running the kitchen, the galley, and they were working for me for months.
Wow.
So not Jeannie. Jeannie was like her own thing. And she actually, it was kind of weird because she got treated like kind of good, like she was a guest, but yet she was being sex checked, and it was all very like odd. I'll bet. So, and then she ended up leaving. Her and her son left and got routed out, and like they couldn't even be, I think that they couldn't even be in Cincinnati anymore. Like they couldn't even be in the org anymore.
That would make sense to me.
Yeah.
Given my treatment little old me trying to make Facebook friends in Twin Cities, and I was getting called to LA for justice. So it makes sense to me that if they took her out of Cincinnati in terms of being a senior executive there, they would just want her disappeared. They wouldn't want her hanging around and people going, Jeannie, what happened? What's up? Oh my God.
Exactly.
Right?
And I think
awkward.
And I think the story given to the public was that her husband had a medical situation,
which he did have.
Yeah.
He got cancer.
So she had to go, her and her son had to go and take care of him, and that's why they left.
Right. Nice cover story.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So
interesting. Now, just for those of you who have absolutely no idea who we're talking about, because I've never really talked much about Jeannie Bogvot, whatever her last name. Sonnenfeld, yes. She's a Sea Org veteran of decades. I mean, going back to the 70s. Her and her husband, David, and they were Sea Org veterans. They were, I think, when I got in the Sea Org in 95, they were, I think, still in or just leaving Los Angeles, and they were working at they had been working at Big Blue in various positions. Jeannie had been the executive director of the Los Angeles org, in fact, for a while. David was a famous, infamous salesperson, Reg at AO. And they had been real Scientology Sea Org powerhouses for a number of years. These were names that people knew. Then they got pregnant. Jeannie got pregnant,
with Connor.
right? Yeah.
And he became the HES.
Right.
And he's one of the executives that came and got completely busted.
That's right.
Yeah, and he used to send me he sent me Christmas cards afterwards. So when I ended up in Columbus, I randomly got a Christmas card from him.
Really?
It went to the HEB and then they sent it to me. So I got a Christmas card from Connor because he worked for me for months.
There you go.
Yeah.
So Jeannie, so my supposition here, my thinking from what you just said, right? Knowing she gets called to LA, sec checked, busted, removed, is that she has been around for so long, has seen so much.
Yeah. And she's so well known, like everybody knows her, and there's so many public that know her and everything.
Exactly. That you have a PR problem.
Yeah.
If you can appreciate this, right? From the Scientology's perspective, you declare people who do bad things or people who are speaking out or people who are no longer with the church. But what do you do with somebody who's actually willing to cooperate with the church, but has done things that are like, yeah, no, we're not going to continue being on this job because we can't trust you anymore. I mean, Jeannie was years. It wasn't just the chase wave. Years of nonsense, right, that she'd gotten up to. So you have to kind of play nice with that person a little bit and use what willingness and loyalty they have and not destroy it or blow it up in the process of removing them from their position. And quite honestly, with Jeannie, she was probably relieved. I don't know. I have no idea.
I don't know.
I really never had two words with her, but so I don't know
she
if she was...
actually took me in session in like 1995.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah. When I first joined the Sea Org.
Interesting.
It was like beginning of, or like end of 94 or something. She took me in session because she was sort of under senior HCO at the time because she was being sent to a class 5 org and she was a class 9 auditor and I needed to go in session for something and
they used her for that.
Yeah,
got it. Until she went down to Cincinnati and took over the place.
Right.
Interesting stuff, right? Well, 1995, 96, that means she was in Cincinnati for decades.
Oh, and there's a Sea Org command team now in Cincinnati.
Yeah. There was a whole, I think it was like 20 people.
No, not Cincinnati. Cincinnati got 4 people. They just got like an EC and then got like a few networks and stuff.
But wasn't there a whole bunch of people that went to clean up the finance stuff too?
Yeah, but it wasn't like 20 people.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I just misheard that.
I think a mission went. I don't know exactly who went, but it wasn't that many people.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
Just reconciling all the reports I get in my head about this stuff. Cool. So, so we do know that she's no longer there, and the Sea Org is sort of taking the place over.
That's right.
Yeah, because of that. And Cincinnati's not the only place that's happened.
That's right.
That's right. So we're gonna proceed in that direction. So
exactly.
So we know about this criminality. We know that it was uncovered. We know Scientology went to great lengths to cover it up, fix it, make it go away, get rid of the people who were doing it.
Yeah.
Beef up what they call their finance network of Sea Org members who are supposed to oversee the bank accounts and the cash flows and where things are going.
Yeah.
These are called flag banking officers and deputy flag banking officers for marketing and things like that. And finance police was the old term for it back in the 80s. I don't know what they call it now, but but finance.
I mean, there's finance inspectors,
there
but
you
that's not like in the org. That's like Sea Org.
Right.
You have like Sea Org and like CLO, or you have ILO, you have finance inspectors, stuff like that.
So where do we pick back up on your story here?
Okay, so I was still in the galley through all this, and I didn't change anything.
Okay.
What I was doing.
But in that position, you were able to see a lot of busted people come through.
Yeah.
Because the galley happens to be a place where they put people who are in
plus
trouble.
Everybody has to eat. And depending on when you eat, where you eat, who you eat with, you're like, oh, okay, I see what's going on here.
Yep.
It's very, very easy to see. So... yeah, so I was doing that. So part of that was that they had pulled, I said that they pulled like every single missionary, right?
No.
They weren't sending out any missions for a little while.
Right. And by the way, the business of the Sea Org is missions.
That's right.
I love pulling out these quotes.
But it's not supposed to be missions to stay in the orgs for months and months and months. And anyway.
No, it's not.
Oh my God.
This, I mean, there is. So, anyway, we won't even go there. But there's it just everywhere you turn.
Anyone who's been in the Sea Org will understand what we mean. Like, oh, you're going on a 2-week mission. Ha 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 ha.
Yeah.
Ha. That's funny. Tell me another joke.
Exactly.
You come back like 6 months later.
That's right.
Or you get posted there.
Exactly. But but having no missions out, missions are projects. They're Sea Org members going out to a remote location to kick ass, take names, deal with something, and come back. That's the idea of a mission, right? You go out, you get something done, and you come back. And there's a whole thing to it. It's a big deal in the Sea Org to do that.
And the missions that were being done at this time were mostly to go out and recruit for the orgs that were about to open. Like, you'd have the renovations going on. Renovations are almost done, or they're rolling. You better man up the org. So nobody was doing that for months.
Right.
So then you had orgs like Kansas City and Columbus. And their renovations were completely done. The org was sitting there ready to open. Everything was ready. Like, you could just walk in and open the org, right?
Yeah.
Of course, you can't open it if you don't have the staff.
Right.
So, and there's no missions out for months doing this, right? And meanwhile, the renovations are continuing because the renovations are being done by outside companies and,
they're paid for, they're on a schedule, etc.
Right.
Yeah.
And the landlord office is still doing their thing and still doing that whole thing, right?
Right.
So
the landlord office, by the way, real quick, is a Sea Org outfit that is at upper management that coordinates and deals with all the contractors, all the money coming in to deal with the renovations of these new church buildings. And they deal with the planning and the coordination and the logistics of all of that. That's that unit. It's called the landlord office.
So they were still doing their thing. So they finished Kansas City and Columbus. And those two orgs were sitting there for months, unable to be opened. And it turned into, well, it was a big flap. It was a big thing for a while, but it finally got to the point where it's like, no, you need to open these orgs. I'm sure David Miscavige was like, hello, you need to open the orgs. What are you guys going to do? So somebody came up with the idea. I don't know if he came up with this or if someone else came up with this and was like, this is what we're going to do.
Yep.
And they're like, okay, well, we're going to send Sea Org members to be staff in the orgs.
Now, this was after Los Angeles org had been converted to a Sea Org. So the precedent was kind of set.
Yeah, it was. But this was like a whole different thing because those two orgs did not turn into Sea Org orgs. Like, they were still class 5. Like, and LA is still class 5 and it's meant to stay with Sea Org members. These two orgs are not meant to have Sea Org members for like the rest of eternity.
Got it.
Although once you get there, you're like, yeah, right. We're going to be here for 6 months. It's like, it's kind of right. Like, where, like, if you think you are going to somehow get staff, what are you going to do? You're going to take all the public and you're going to put them on staff. And then you don't have any public left because not enough people are coming in. There's like a trickle of new people coming in. So then what do you do?
Well, actually, give us a little heads up because you actually went there.
Yeah.
How many active public were there in Columbus?
Oh, in Columbus, less than 100.
Right. Yeah. Twin Cities was 119.
Yeah.
I mean, I have the list, right? So,
I'm sure.
So this is, and that was after I was running around doing recoveries for a year.
And that number I gave you was after there was a whole, all the Sea Org members were there.
Yep.
Contacting people, getting more people in, doing more than any of the class 5 people would do because it was just, we were full time and we didn't have all the concerns that class 5 staff had of, they have another job, they have kids, they have this and that, and they have a life. And then they're trying to be on staff, which is very hard to do. I did it for a little while when I was in Portland and that was interesting.
Yep.
So it started with Kansas City. They got about 50 people. It was like 40. It was between like 40 and 50 people. And they took them from PAC and ILO, basically between PAC and ILO. They just pulled people and put them into training for a little bit and then sent them out, right? Yeah. That was done really fast. That was done within like a couple weeks or something of it like starting to be a thing. Then everybody was gone. So then after that, and Kansas City is in a little bit better shape than Columbus was. They had more Class 5 staff already.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Do you remember about how many, give or take?
I think probably between like 40 or 50, because they ended up with probably about 100 staff or something
Really?
like that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they were in a little bit better shape.
So the Sea Org did go into Kansas City, but they were bolstering a scene that was already had some people there.
Exactly. So
Okay.
I think it was.
Did they
about
take
40
over the
people.
org, run the command structure of it when they came in?
Yeah, definitely. Like the ED was a Sea Org ED, and I think the idea was that the current executives were put like under them to apprentice, and then they were supposed to be sent for training later or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Because it would be a weird situation to have Sea Org show up in a Class 5 city level church and then have a civilian executive director, just a regular staff member ordering them around. That wouldn't fly.
Let me tell you about. I'll wait until I tell you about Columbus. Okay, so then Columbus had like probably less than 10 staff or something. So Columbus was a major. Oh my God, so many people were needed for Columbus. Mm-hmm. And so here I am working in the galley, and I basically get told like, it was like a Friday. Yeah, it was a Friday morning or Thursday morning or something. No, it was a Friday morning. I get told with a few other people, we get pulled in this like conference room with the COCMO. She's like, you guys are going to Columbus. And I was one of the people that was told. I was like, I'm going to Columbus? Excuse me? Are you sure?
Right. Because you're food service.
Yeah. And I'd been on that post for 12 years.
Right.
And I was supposed to leave within like 3 days. And I'm like, I don't have a replacement. I don't have like, what?
Right.
So then there was like 2 people that were given to replace me, and they're gone now, but whatever. I mean, they didn't last. Remember Jamie Royce?
I remember the name.
He was actually my replacement. He was one of the missionaries. He got busted from being a missionary. And so he was running around in that status. And I was like, okay, you're going to replace her so she can go to Columbus.
Got it. So they were sort of doing a little bit of a big presto changeo with the people coming in who were all ethics particles or justice babies or whatever. And okay, now we're going to use them to replace out you fresh, good, ethical people who can go do the job and get it done properly. Yeah, and I'm only using these sort of like goofy descriptions because this is kind of how they think about it in that world. Yeah. So, okay. So they're trading you out.
Yeah. So
now just a question real fast, because I just want to kind of highlight what I suspect is what's going on here. You've been working in the galley. You have this is not just going in every day and washing dishes and putting food on a plate and giving it to people. You are over food ordering, production. I mean, there's a lot of moving parts.
The logistics are ridiculous because all the food got made at pack and had to get transported 3 times a day for 900 people to the HTB, and it's just the logistics on that is ridiculous. And keeping somebody, having a driver, having a van, having all there's so many parts to it where you have to, it's just ridiculous. I mean, people wouldn't believe what we actually did every day to make sure that there was food for the crew on time every day, 3 times a day.
That's why I wanted to highlight it, because it's one of these things where you get called into a room where a person who doesn't understand your job doesn't even bother to try to understand your job or the things that are involved in it, even though this is food service.
That's right.
This person's food is going to be directly affected by moving you.
Oh, she was directly affected because I was the one servicing her every day and every other executive in that place.
Right.
So I was like, okay, cool.
I mean,
all right.
This is what you
want. I don't
want.
know what to say. Okay. Right. And I had like 2 hours to like write up my post and
2 hours.
And like I, went in and out doing a hat turnover for a few days anyway, it was very.
Right. Hat turnover is Scientology language for turning your job over to somebody else.
Yeah, exactly.
Your job is like a hat. That's what they call it in Scientology.
So then in the middle of this, there was this question of, am I okay to go out or not? Because of my mom from earlier. And it was like, is she okay? Is she not okay? And the person who could give okay was in Kansas City at the time. And at first it was like, oh yeah, she's okay. And then it was like, no, actually she's not okay. Actually, she's okay. And this went on for like 4 days. Meanwhile, it was like, okay, go on course, study these courses that you have to get through really fast, you know, get your uniform, you're like, I was getting ready to go, but then it was like, you're going, you're not going, you're going, you're not going for like a few days. Right. So that was Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So then Monday, I finally got the official, okay, you can go. And then it was like, okay, go pack. You're getting on a plane tonight at like 9 p.m. And I was told at 5 p.m. and I hadn't finished turning over my job. I was like, oh my God. So I went and packed in like 2 hours. And anyway, there's this whole thing. I went and packed, and then I came back to say goodbye to a bunch of people because I was like, oh my God, I'm leaving.
Would you say that your experience here that you're describing really quickly is par for the course for personnel emergencies or flaps?
Yeah.
It's not unusual. It's not like what happened to you in those 4 days is so unique and special and different.
It's not unusual. I mean, there's so many Sea Org members going out to do what we did is unusual. Like that is never... Yeah. It's except for LA, it's never been done before. Yeah. And even with LA, there was more of a turnover. And plus you're not going as far. So it's like if you have a post turnover, you can finish your post turnover. People went into training for several weeks, a month or whatever. And then they opened up the whole thing. This was done within like a week or something. It was like very, very fast because it was like, okay, the org's going to open no matter what on this date. And you better have the staff.
Yep.
So there wasn't any choice.
You know what's so interesting about this in retrospect for me as I sit here right now is that I have famously mentioned a few times, famously, I don't know how famous it is. So sorry about that. But I have mentioned a few times.
I don't know. You're pretty famous.
That, infamous. That I was up for 5 straight days once for a personnel evolution. Yeah. It was ASHO. It was when ASHO got renovated.
Oh, wow.
And this is back in like 96 or whatever, right? It was a long way back in the day. And we were going to do exactly what you're describing was done with Kansas City, with LA org, is we were going through in PAC at the continental level, we were given the ILO crew list. We were given, really? For a little while.
Saying, who do you want?
We had all the people in PAC to choose from, and we were to propose people from ILO. Yeah. This is a senior echelon. This is like, somebody at the FBI LA office suggesting who should get moved around up at the FBI headquarters. Like it's all backwards. Yeah. But this was how crazy this was that we had to get ASHO, this American St. Hill organization, manned up. And we had a week because it had been renovated and it was going to be open. And I only comment on this because it's an earlier version of this whole craziness that has been going on more recently. But you know what happened after 5 days is the whole thing got canceled. We were all told go to bed because after 5 days of torture, vitamin shots and personnel files and desks of paperwork and all this crap we were going through, they were like, yeah, it was a little bit, we were all having a little bit, like somehow the word came down that it was sort of like we were all having a kind of really an incredible moment of stupidity, thinking that this is how we would go about manning up one of our orgs would be to just like rip off all these people from everywhere. And this is in the 90s that this happened and gets canceled as this big and we all breathed a big collective sigh of relief because we all thought it was absolutely insane. Yeah. It violated every single policy letter Hubbard ever wrote about how to deal with personnel. And so the whole thing got canceled. And it's interesting and funny to me that to literally see the de-evolution of this, that now that's par for the course. Now that's just routine. Back in the 90s, it was so insane of an idea that we all came to our collective senses and went, what? That was crazy. Good thing we didn't do that.
I mean, they did the same thing to like start manning up the finance network. It was like people were taken from, like my junior was taken, no replacement. It was like, oh, actually, you don't need this person. I'm like, excuse me? Do you know what it takes to feed 900 people 3 times a day?
Right.
You have any idea?
Right. And they don't.
No. They don't.
And they don't want to know, because if they do, then they have to reconsider ripping your junior off, right? And so as long as they kind of don't know,
as long as they have food in front of them, they're
exactly.
If the food's not there, maybe they'll notice, but probably not.
That's right.
They'll just go to the canteen and go buy
It's just exactly. Well, we went to the canteen a lot anyway, but yeah. So interesting. Just kind of interesting to me how things devolved.
Yeah.
Is really what I'm kind of saying here. Is things really have gotten so stupidly dumb in that world.
Totally.
So yeah, rip off is the order of the day.
Yeah.
You know, and it used to be at least you'd have to try to have some semblance of a replacement, but it, you know, with this numbers, that's impossible. There's no way you can just take 50 people and expect that you've got 50 random bodies just sitting around waiting to fill those jobs.
But the funny thing is, and especially it's especially in management, where you're not directly dealing with public, you can actually have a lot of people that are extraneous, and you're like, what are these people doing? Especially when you're like on a physical post, like I would look around, I'd be like, there's gotta be 5 people out of these 900 people that they're not needed on what they're doing, that can come and, like, you know, handle my dairy delivery so I don't break my back.
Right.
And somehow there wasn't. And I'm like, I just don't believe it.
Right.
I don't believe it. Anyway.
Well, priorities change.
Right.
At some point, they'll get around to a galley man-up, but
maybe. Yeah. They probably did it after I left, actually,
right.
because
right.
it was
Nobody's
such a flap.
fed.
And after COVID, because the dishwasher was like 65 years old, and I'm sure he was like taken out of there.
Exactly.
Anyway.
Well, please continue.
Okay, so that
you get
was
sent
October.
off.
Yeah, that was end of October
2019.
2019.
Okay.
That's when I went, and basically everybody that went within like a couple week period.
Okay. All right. So see, this is interesting because my timing from what I said a few weeks ago was off, in that I thought it was around August or so that the busts started happening, but it was actually significantly earlier.
Oh yeah, that was early. That was like February,
thing.
March.
Right.
Explosion, and then it went for like a few months, various things happening and projects going out, people going into finance and different things happening. And then, actually, they took for Kansas City and also for Columbus, they actually took a lot of these busted missionaries and were like, okay, go to Kansas City and make good. Go be staff in Kansas City. Go be staff in Columbus.
Right.
Like the senior INR international ended up in Columbus as a reg.
Wow.
And he actually, actually he wasn't. No, I'm sorry. He was an auditor. Because he was OT5. He was an auditor, but I say a reg because he was regging most of the money for the org.
Right.
So,
exactly.
Yeah.
So basically, it would be like taking your inspector general in the government, you know, like a high level ethics justice person, and making him a salesperson, you know, at a city level operation.
That's right.
Right. Go make good.
Yeah.
Go prove your worth.
That was a lot of the staff, actually.
Okay.
That ended up.
That kind of a thing.
And then there's just other random people. Like I was sort of random. I wasn't like in trouble or anything. It was just like, oh, okay, we'll send you out. Go have some fun in a class 5 org. I'm like, okay, cool. And
wow.
And I actually was pretty excited to go out at the time because I'd been in LA for so long. I hated LA. I was so sick of LA. I'm just like, I want to do something different. Plus I was starting to get burnt out from working in the galley. I had back problems. I probably should have several times over the year, probably should have actually ended up in the ER for back issues.
Oh, wow.
Neck issues.
That bad.
Yeah. Like once, I think it was 2011. Yeah, it was like 2011. I was in bed for 4 days. I could not get out of bed for 4 days. And this is kind of the ironic thing is that I lived with the medical liaison officer. She was my roommate. She was one of my roommates. And so I was in bed for 4 days and she didn't really do anything about it. And my senior got so upset that she called a chiropractor and got the chiropractor to come to the birthing to my room to give me an adjustment because I was in such pain and I can hardly move. Wow. And then when the MLO came home that night, she was yelling at me. She was like, you have no idea how expensive that is and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, little tiny Italian girl.
What was her name?
Stefania.
Huh.
Stefania. Oh, I forget her last name. Starteri or something.
Yeah, she was
Yeah.
the MLO on the RPF
Yeah. Oh, really?
that I was on.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So it was
that's funny.
so
That's funny to me.
she didn't do anything. She didn't do anything to
Wow.
help me, and she had a cow on me.
Of course she did.
Because it cost so much money to have a chiropractor come in, and meanwhile I couldn't get out of bed. It was
Right.
I literally couldn't get out of
now
bed.
you're aware of the fact now that this is an organization that is sitting on a couple $2 billion in reserves,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, and
what
I
did you
knew there
think
was
at the
money.
time?
I knew there was money. I knew there was money, but I tell you, and in the ILO, money was always they were always redoing the financial planning. They were always cutting things back. I knew the medical float got cut back, like severely cut back.
Right.
There was not, I mean, the amount of times I paid for like my own chiropractic. I would
Really?
pay for my own chiropractic. I would be like, can I go to the chiropractor? Oh, sorry, there's no money. Okay, I'm going anyway. I'll pay it myself. I did that many times because I was in such pain I couldn't work.
Right.
And then it was like, don't dramatize and don't this and that. And yeah.
Yeah, so your handling was don't dramatize.
Yeah, or get assists,
Right.
which actually never did anything for me. I think they did maybe once or twice. I got a little bit of relief, but otherwise, no.
Spoiler.
That was not.
They never did anything for anybody.
Right?
Assists are useless. Just saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when I finally got, actually right before I went to Columbus, I was supposed to finally get an actual treatment on my back because I was in pain all the time. Mm-hmm. And the guy I worked with had 2 hernias. My senior had 2 hernias from lifting heavy stuff that should not be lifted by one person over and over and over every single day of his life. So that was a little bit more urgent to get handled. So he went for surgery and did that like a month before I left and before I knew I was going anywhere. And it was like, I was supposed to do my handling after that. And then I went to Columbus instead.
So that never happened.
Yeah, that never happened.
Right.
That never happened.
Par for the course, unfortunately. Yeah. So, okay.
Yeah.
So life was not exactly just a bed of roses for you working in the galley, but at least it was a life that was predictable to a degree.
Yeah,
for you.
it was to a degree predictable, and it was to a large degree very controllable. Like I was in control of things, and I didn't have a lot of people coming in and giving me stupid orders and whatever.
Right.
And I enjoyed what I was doing. Like I don't mind working as long as I'm not, work to the point of being in pain, which I was. But yeah, it was not like being in management where you just get driven crazy practically.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. You weren't going to 2 or 3 meetings a day.
Yeah.
All of that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay. Fair enough. But now you're being sent to Columbus where things are about to change.
Yeah.
Okay, so October 2019.
Yeah, so I go to Columbus and
what did they put you on?
Well, first they did like orientation and everything for a couple days. And then because they were still working out who was going to be on what post and back and forth on that and whatever.
Okay.
So then I think on like the 2nd or 3rd day that I was there, they put everybody on post. Like they'd like read off the name and, blah, blah is the PES, blah, blah is the whatever. So I went into Div 6,
okay.
Div 6A.
And that's public facing new people, getting new people in.
That's right.
Okay.
And I was the director of public promotion.
Okay.
Which was actually a lot of fun at the time. Like when I first started, it was a lot of fun. I got into whatever, I'll get into it. But so I was on that and then the org opened, I think within like less than 2 weeks, the org opened.
Of you arriving there.
Yeah.
Okay. Now in your arrival there, I guess you guys got uniformed with the staff uniforms and all that. You got fitted for that. Where were you staying?
They rented apartments in this, it was actually like a 5-minute drive from the org. It was actually nice apartments.
Okay.
Not bad at all. It was like the nicest place I've ever lived in the Sea Org because they couldn't do this thing that they do in the Sea Org birthing of shoving like 9 people in a room. Oh, by the way, so backing up one anecdote from regarding birthing in I don't know, 2017 or something, 2016, something like that. So the entire CMO was living in the Bronson building, which is the birthing housing for the Sea Org members in CC, Celebrity Center International. So the CMO was living in there, right? Yep. So within 12 hours, somebody said, I'm sure it was David Miscavige, said, I want the CMO out of the Bronson, out of that building. They need to get out right now. So overnight, literally overnight, the entirety of the CMO moved into the Anthony building. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And I helped on that.
And the AB kind of sucks.
Oh, yeah, it totally sucked.
See, the Bronson building is right across the street from the building you guys could look up called Celebrity Center International. It's this beautiful old hotel building that was renovated. And they have this building right across the way that's an old apartment complex.
But it's fully renovated, actually.
And it's renovated.
It's
that's right.
Really nice, yeah.
And so that's why the CMO are there, because it's a nice place to live. I think there's even a pool there. Or anyway, it's a nice place. But yeah, so they're all out of there because of some arbitrary order.
Right.
And they get sent to a building that is probably one of the worst buildings, at least when I left it was.
Yeah, plus it wasn't like there was rooms for 50 people.
Right.
Like somebody had to work out where all these people were going to be shoved into. And my room actually it was a 6-person dorm, and I ended up with 10 people in there. And the beds were literally like, there was 2 beds that were together like this because there was no space.
Wow.
So that it was kind of nice to go from that to
get the hell out of there.
Columbus in an actual apartment and only live with 3 other people, because legally, like per the lease agreement and everything, they could only have 4 people.
Yep.
Per apartment, which was great. We loved it. Yeah. We had our little living room and kitchen and everything, and we only had to share a room with 1 person. Oh my God, instead of 9.
Right. So were any married couples sent out?
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Definitely.
Just curious.
But it was most of it was like the couple would be sent. It wasn't just like one or the other person. I think
they weren't splitting up couples too much.
Yeah, I think there was one that was gonna be, and then she refused, and that was a whole whatever. That was a whole thing.
Interesting.
Yeah. So then the org opened beginning of November, and we basically got to work as Class 5 staff, and everybody had their posts, and it was kind of cool because everybody was starting at the same time in a new org, and you had like it was like, everybody was sort of thrown together, but whoever did like the posting actually thought it through pretty well. And we're doing pretty good. We're doing all sorts of stuff. And then
now, like, what is that? What kind of things were you doing on a regular basis?
What I was doing is I was doing I don't know, you probably want to explain this a little bit better, but about the campaigns, non-existence.
Oh, the promo campaigns. Yeah.
So the mission. So there was a mission that was there that was putting all the staff there, and they were getting that campaign going, and then it was given over to me to do. So I was the media liaison, newspaper, TV. I did all of that.
Okay. Was there actually TV?
Yeah. There was TV ads.
You got some TV spots.
Yeah, we did some TV ads.
Wow.
There was actually a TV station right across the street from the org.
Oh.
And we worked with a guy who's totally like, he totally was into it. And
yeah. Well, what happens is when a new ideal org opens, they're given a set amount of money, or there's usually a fund of, okay, this is for your promotion to get the word out. You've opened. You're like here, Scientology,
$200,000 or something.
Yeah,
something like
it's an amount, and you have some kind of market research done, supposedly.
Supposedly, yeah.
Yeah, supposedly. It's a pretty big supposed, because in Twin Cities it was a joke, and I know in Vegas it was a bit of a joke too. So I know that the market research is not really like pro level stuff.
Yeah.
But you get a message, you get some kind of messaging or some kind of imaging, branding that you're supposed to use in this campaign to let people know you're there. We're open. We're here. We're Scientology. We're here to help. Whatever the message is for the local area, and you are the one administering that.
You get to put on TV. You get like a short TV ad that introduces the org and tells people to come in. You get radio spots, like pre pre-made radio spots.
Yeah.
You don't have to make them or anything. You just organize to get them. And then I did internet. There's various internet ads that you do. You know, you go on YouTube and you get an ad or whatever, and they can these media places can target different areas. So it's like everyone within a 5-mile radius or a 10-mile radius, whatever demographics that you want, you tell them, and you do. It's the whole thing you do with them.
Right.
So I was working on that quite a bit. And then we got into, actually after COVID, we got into book selling. So I'll get into that after, but.
Okay. And generally speaking, just from experience here, this kind of targeted marketing and ads and the TV spots and all of that tends to be a bit of a one-off. I mean, this is not what you have staff in Scientology churches over the years learning about and specializing and having the resources to do. They don't get radio spots and TV spots and all that stuff. This is kind of a concentrated effort to do this, what's called a non-existence campaign.
Yeah, and by the way, I had no training in marketing whatsoever.
Right? And
no training. I'd never worked on these. I never worked on these lines before. It was fun. Right. I liked it, but I didn't really know what I was doing. I was like working with media people at iHeartRadio, and I was working with the TV station and different people like that. And right. I really was like, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm going to do the best I can type thing.
Exactly. And that's generally, to be honest, your general staff member at your general city level class 5 org, that's kind of how they're approaching things, you know? And so these campaigns tend to, kind of come and go, and then it's kind of over, and, maybe 6 months, 8 months, and then it's done. And then you're trying to like, well, now what? Now what do we do? And you kind of don't really know what you're doing. And so the thing that's one of many of the reasons why, even at the city level, these things tend to sputter out and not really go anywhere. But how did it go for you guys?
It went good until COVID.
Right.
So that was
timing.
So the org opened beginning of November. We went through November through December, January, February. Things started to get a little bit weird. Like they have this thing every year where they have Arnold Schwarzenegger does an event in Columbus. He does this every year.
Oh,
it's kind of cool. There's like tons of people. There's like all these bodybuilders and people that come in and stuff. It is actually pretty cool. So that got basically canceled. Like we were going to do a whole thing at that, book selling and promo and everything. And that basically got canceled. He still did the event, but it was like very limited amount of people that could come in. And that was when COVID was just like becoming a thing. Right.
So this was like February, March, 2020.
That was February. That event was in February. It was like end of February.
Yeah.
And before that I was doing, we would go to like, there was hockey games, all these different like sports activities, and we would go and we would hand out promo to people that were coming to those, before and after. We would hand out little flyers and stuff to get people interested. And I think there was how
many of you guys were going out doing this?
I used to get like between like 10 and 15 staff to go out and do that.
Really?
With me. Yeah. I would.
Wow. So it was a real dedicated effort.
Yeah. I would go around and recruit people to go, and I would demand that. I'm like, do you want people in here? Okay. Give me some people to go out and do promo. So I was pretty like adamant about it.
And the statistics, getting just to get a quick look at that, that you were keeping track of on a weekly basis would have been about promo pieces handed out or given out.
Yeah, it was like how much was being given out.
Okay. And
then I also started tracking like as far as responses, like how many people would come in and whatever, which was like a very, very low amount compared to the promo we were handing out. And that's why I'm like, I don't know what surveys they did for this promo or whatever, but it wasn't really...
Right. It wasn't biting.
Yeah, it wasn't really biting. Some of it was a little bit better. Some of it people would just reject, and the staff would actually be like, I'm not handing out this piece anymore because everybody rejects it. They would do that on some pieces.
Oh, that's
but
interesting.
Be like, okay, fine, let's not use that. We'll use something else.
Interesting. What did you notice at all during this time? Any kickback or complaints or remarks from public to you?
Oh, yeah. Are you kidding me? People would scream at you.
Really?
People would like, yeah. some people were like not nasty about it, and they'd just be like, no, thank you. And some people would be like, no fucking way. And be like, anyway.
What did you think about that at that time?
Well, I had a few thoughts about it. I mean, at first I was like, okay, well, it's supposed to be like, okay, it shows that you're disseminating more. You know what I mean? Like it
The
shows
SPs
that
will
you're,
howl.
yeah, exactly. So I sort of had that viewpoint, but after a while I was just like, I hate doing this. I was like, I hate this.
Interesting.
I hated doing direct handouts of promo. I was just like, oh, I really hate this. So actually when COVID hit and we didn't do that anymore, I was like, good, because I hate doing that.
Did anybody try to talk to you about Scientology?
No, I mean...
Or drop any Leah-isms or anything like that on you, or chant Xenu at you?
Oh, yeah, there was some of that, and we were just
there?
Whatever. We would just walk away.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So was there ever... Did anybody ever say anything to you or somebody that, you know, in your earshot that required any kind of handling?
No, because it was easy, because you're just trying to give a piece of promo to somebody. If somebody starts getting weird or nasty or whatever, you just walk away. You're just like, okay, that's fine. I'm not interested. And besides, we were doing it like at sports games. So people were on their way into the stadium, or they're on their way out to go home. So it was not like somebody would necessarily stop and have a whole conversation with you.
Okay.
It was like a very fast thing.
Okay, cool. I bring it up because I am often asked, and it's a good question. Well, what could I say? What should I do? You know, when I'm dealing with here's a Scientologist in front of me in a social situation all of a sudden. What do I do? What do I say? How do I deal with that? And I've always said, well, the one thing you definitely should not be doing is chanting Xenu at them.
Yeah,
right?
or being nasty in any way. It just,
Right.
it doesn't get you anywhere. The person will just walk away.
Right.
It doesn't accomplish anything except to just upset somebody. I was like, even now, I wouldn't go and like say nasty things to like, what's the point?
Right.
What's the point? You're not going to get through to somebody that way. That's not how anyone got through to me.
Exactly.
Except to make me be like, oh, I don't want to really do this anymore because I don't want to. I don't want to deal with these jerks.
Exactly. Exactly. Well, because people are curious about this, and like I said, it comes up often.
Yeah.
I'm curious, and you don't necessarily have to have some pat answer to this. I'm just curious. Did you know at that time in your frame of mind? Now you were a Sea Org member dressed as a Class 5 staff member, so a little bit more level of dedication and commitment than your regular staff member.
Yeah.
But being in that position, being at the city level, interacting with the public the way that you were, having the job you were having, you were pretty much in a kind of a Class 5 kind of mindset. Could somebody have done something or said something to you at that time that would have, even after all the experiences you'd had, that would have made you do a double take or think twice or maybe
if I was by myself.
Yes.
If I was with any other staff, no.
Right.
Because you don't know how dedicated, you don't really know where those other people are at, and people kind of, watch out for each other and whatever. So if you're with somebody, no. If you're not with anybody, you're a little bit more approachable. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. At that point, I would have just walked away and not really been interested, but been like, oh, this is just some weirdo. And I would have been, no, that's okay. I don't want to talk to you type thing.
Right. So you're still pretty closed off on that.
Yeah.
Got it.
But it really got me like, it did get me thinking to the point of like, why are people being so nasty?
Right.
Why are people so nasty?
Right.
Like, what is the point? Like, and if you ask about it within the org, it's just like, you'd be shown various references on like, SP characteristics or whatever. Mm-hmm. But I was still just like, this somehow doesn't make sense why people are so nasty.
Exactly. Exactly. The thing that drove me to the internet to start with, besides looking up people on skip tracing, was I was trying to figure out why we weren't sharing enough successes and wins online, because all people had was all the bad news.
Yeah.
And I kept thinking we need to flood them with the good news, which was the strategy back in the early 2000s with that whole FSM online thing and all of that, which failed so miserably. And I came to realize, of course, that the reason for that is because the successes are ridiculous and don't really mean much anyway. But I didn't have any clue what the what the truth actually was about it. So I thought, well, we're just not taking advantage of the internet to the level that we should be, is kind of what I was thinking.
Yeah. I mean, I had started looking at things online while I was in LA. I started because, and sort of the way it got started.
Really?
It was kind of the org's fault, actually, because what happened was, okay, so I had this whole thing with my mom, which I described in the last interview, right?
Yeah.
So, and she put things about me online, and different people said things about me online. So I was kind of like, well, is there more stuff going online? And so I would check every once in a while with a non-filtered internet, because you could go on your way to the org on your CSP, you get time every day, Sunday morning, people would stop at coffee shops and whatever. It really wasn't a big thing. And you could get non-filtered internet. So
did you have a laptop? Or
no, I just had an iPod.
Oh, yeah, an iPod.
Yeah,
okay.
iPods are great. iPods are great, by the way.
Got
They'll
it.
probably cancel all iPods for Steward members after this interview. I'm really sorry, guys, but yeah, you can use them as phones. They're great. They're fabulous.
Got it. So you don't have to have a laptop.
You don't have to have a laptop or a phone. You just have an iPod and you're all set. So technology is wonderful, by the way. Mm-hmm. Anyway, so I just started checking things. Like I would just look up myself, because I want to know, is my mom saying anything else? That was my first thought. I was like, is she saying anything else? And she actually did. Mark Bunker did a whole thing about me in one of these interviews or something. And actually, Mark Headley attended that, which is funny. But he read a whole thing from my mom at one point, and then that was online, and nobody told me about that. I just found it online myself, and I was like, thanks guys for telling me that she did this, because nobody told me. And I knew that they knew, because I knew people were checking. There's like somebody full-time in OSA that checks internet stuff, and he's like pissed off all the time, by the way. He's like in a really bad mood all the time. The poor guy.
Yeah.
He's like, poor guy. He should just freaking leave. He's literally like, he's messed up physically. He's just not a happy person. I know him personally.
One guy. That is so
I'm sure there's other people that do it too, but he's like the main guy that knows what's going down.
How interesting.
Yeah.
I bet everybody out here has all kinds of questions for that guy. Mostly around the topic of how the hell do you maintain belief?
Exactly. And it makes me wonder if he does, because he's really not a happy person.
Wow.
He's really just, he's not really nasty, but he seems to always be in a bad mood.
And with that job, I could see why.
Yeah.
I could see why.
Right?
Interesting. That is an interesting piece of inside baseball there. So, okay, please continue. So you saw this about yourself, though.
Yeah. So I would look up things. I just started looking up things about myself. And then when the Stanley website came out.
Yep.
Actually, somebody from OSA told me to check out the website, because they had different things about people. And it's like, if you want to handle Black PR and whatever, check that out. Right. And you could access that in the org. So I read a bunch of that, and I'm like, oh, that's really interesting. Okay, fine. So then
we have posited out here that that's exactly what those sites were created for, that the Leah site and the hate sites and all of that are for Scientologists.
Yeah.
They're not for the general public to read and go, oh, Leah's such a bad person. It's for Scientologists to read and go, oh, Leah's such a bad person.
Right. That's what I think too.
Yeah.
I really do think that.
Yeah.
But it was interesting, because after a couple months of that website starting up, they blocked it in the org. You couldn't get it anymore.
Interesting.
And I was like, what the fuck? I was like, what? I was mad. I was like, why can't I get this website anymore? And then around the same time, I realized I hadn't seen any Freedom mags for a long time. And I used to always look at the Freedom mags. I'm like, these things are great. And so I asked the Freedom mag editor, who's an OSA.
Yeah.
I was like, how come we don't see the Freedom mags anymore? They're not being done or what? And he's like, oh no, they're being done all the time, but they're for external public. And I'm like, what does that mean? External public. What is that? Why can't I see the Freedom mag? And I was mad. I was like, wow. Okay. So then I would look up the Stan League stuff, with non-filtered stuff, and just see if there was anything new. And obviously, because there was stuff on Mike Rinder, stuff on all these Seorg high-level Sea Org executives who left and who are now like speaking up. They didn't want the general Sea Org staff to see that. So, and I kind of puzzled that out for myself, and I was just like, why? Okay, if these people are so bad, wouldn't you want the rest of the Sea Org to know why they're so bad? And like, instead of filling in their own information and just wondering about it or whatever, wouldn't you want them to know this? And I'm just like, so they kind of filed away, you know, in the bullpen.
Interesting.
Okay, so then I went to, so we left off.
There must have been some bad incidents for them to change the policy on that, because it went from open to closed, right?
Yeah.
So they must have had the intention, like we said, that this would be something for internal PR purposes to handle for people, but then somehow that backfired.
Or somebody saw it, or maybe David Miscavige saw that anyone could access it and was like, no, I don't want the rest of the Sea Org to know about that.
Right, something like that. It could have been any number of things, but somehow there was an incident that backfired, I am sure, that caused that.
Yeah.
Which is interesting to me, because I'll tell you one thing. I don't know if we've never talked about this, so I don't know if you have any knowledge about it, but are you aware of the Marty Freedom Mag?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, that was a backfire, right? I mean, I read that when I was still in. And
I don't know that I read it. I think I heard about it. How is it a backfire, though?
It's the Posse of Lunatics issue, where they...
I didn't see that.
It's all about Mike Rinder, Marty Rathbun, and a bunch of Amy Scobie and other people, and they rename them with these crude labels, and like Amy Scobie is the seductress, you know, and this because she's so out 2D, right? Wow. And Tom DeVock is, you know, this guy, and Rathbun is like the beater, the abuser, the whatever, and they position it all this way, and absolutely, positively make the case that beatings were a routine activity at the international base when Marty and Mike were there, and they end up making it out that it's all Marty and Mike's fault. Yeah. Because Miscavige, of course, never knew anything about any of this. Right? Is what's in the mag. Right. But it confirms, it doesn't deny, it confirms over and over again how rife with out ethics and beatings things were in it management. Wow. You know, if you really read this thing and you really look at it and go, what the hell is this thing telling me? It's telling me that things are insane there, and kind of confirms rather than denies all these claims that Miscavige is beating on people and the whole and all of that stuff. Like you kind of read between the lines and it's all very clear. And I think that kind of had a backfire effect. It sure as hell did on me. And I read about a bunch of other Scientologists and Sea Org members who read that magazine and were like, what the fuck? Yeah. Right? It was just this, you know, because prior to me reading that and even having gone through a full RPF with other INT staff, the view and the claims about INT management and the gold base were, it's heaven on earth. Yeah. It's heaven on earth. Right. It is the most ideal.
Like the ideal place.
That's right. Yeah. It was always positioned that way. Right. When you went up, you know, or you went up lines, you were going to heaven. Right. I mean, people even on the RPF wouldn't bitch about it, right?
I wanted to go to gold for years.
Oh, me too.
I was like, I want to go to gold.
Yeah.
That's cool. I want to go be in City.
And you have this idea at the lower levels that every single policy is fully integrated and figured out, and it's all runs like clockwork, and it's this beautiful, beautiful place. And everything couldn't be more on policy and in tech and wonderful. Yeah. And that's how it was always talked about. And you never heard anything bad about it at all. And it was only on the RPF when I would hear little tiny whispered snippets here and there, you know, about the cat fighting, you know, in the CMO, or the this or the that, or when Miscavige was on a tear one day. Or you'd hear these little things and be like, wait a minute, what? And then I read this Freedom Mag. Wow. You know, before I've seen all the exposés, I haven't seen the Truth Rundown. I haven't seen all that stuff. I just saw the internal publication. And I was like, what the fuck?
Wow.
Right. And so that's that backfire effect I'm talking about, where you're putting out a piece to quench the, fire, to put it out.
Yeah.
And instead you're throwing gas. And I think that's one of the things
that
that
was
they
probably
caught
a
on
similar
with.
thing with the Stan League website.
That's
There's
right.
just because there's just too many people, and there's too many senior execs that just left. They're gone. Like I can look at pictures. I can. There was something recently on. I think Karen Deleclerc. I can never say her last name. Yeah, I can never say her last name. So she had something recently on like the Outer Banks or something, where somebody put these like old pictures of Sea Org members, like different exec teams and stuff, and I'm like looking at all these people. I'm like, they're out. He's out. She's out. Yeah, like everybody's like, so many people are gone. So many people left.
Yep, exactly. And when you're in and you see things that remind you of that or communicate that, backfire, right? That's that. No, we don't want that, right?
Yeah.
So better to just keep you in the dark about what your own mother's doing.
Right.
Right. Than potentially expose you to, doubts and reservations and confusions. And
exactly.
re-stimulate all your evil purposes, right? So,
especially that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so you were seeing this though. You were seeing this online.
I saw some of that online, and that was when I was in LA. And it sort of got me starting to think about things. But even more than that, I was just like, I just started thinking to myself, I'm just not happy. It just comes down to the fact I'm just not happy. I'm not enjoying myself. I was for a while, then things would get bad and get okay again. But I was in physical pain. I was just not happy. So then when I went to Columbus, I was like, okay, fresh start, new org, new staff, new place, new post. I'm not doing this like physical work that's like killing me anymore. Yep. So that's kind of nice, and I liked it for a while. I had a little bit of, I had like some back issues and whatever. And I was,
how was the schedule in terms of sleep and stuff? Were you getting 8 hours?
It was actually, the schedule was actually very good. It was nice. It was actually very good because it was a service org and there wasn't like a lot to do after, 10 o'clock or whatever.
You didn't get woken up at 2:30 in the morning for some CMO meeting to do the appetizers.
People would generally go home. I know it got a little bit bad towards the end when I left. It got a little bit bad. Not for a lot of the staff, but for like the execs would be up figuring things out, or they'd be woken up to do this or that, or there was people being sent to training and things like that being worked out. But I'm getting way ahead of myself.
Yeah, let's go ahead.
So that was.
So we're still in like February, March of 2020.
Okay, yeah. So I was talking about like COVID is starting to come, which was a very, very weird time, by the way. So.
Yeah, so let's hear all about it.
Yeah, here comes COVID. And at first it was like, the staff. There started to be a decrease in public coming into the org. Okay.
Because they're getting sick, or
no, because they were like, no, we're not coming in. They were like staying home. People were starting to stay home, and less people were coming in. Less new people were coming in. We stopped handing out promo at one point because people were just like, "Why are you handing me something?" Like, no,
yeah, stay away from me.
Yeah, we stopped doing that because social distancing and everything. So, and that was like end of February, getting into March. I remember the ED specifically being like, telling us, public can still come in. The virus isn't everywhere. It was just like a stop dramatizing type thing. This is going to pass and whatever. Right. And then
and let's be clear for those of you who aren't totally familiar with this already, we're not going to go into a whole song and dance on this, but the short version is Scientologists don't believe in germs. Scientologists believe that you develop a situation where you are what's called PTS. You are you've connected with somebody who's a bad person and they're having a bad influence, negative influence on your life and on you. And they are getting you all introverted and insulting you or giving you a bad time or whatever. And this is the reason you get sick. This is the reason you have illness or accidents or injuries, is because of a PTS condition. And this is the law in Scientology. This is not an optional kind of way of thinking. Everybody in Scientology thinks this way because Hubbard is insistent upon it. So with this idea that there's this virus going around, Scientologists will tend to tell themselves, well, I'm not PTS, so I'm not going to get sick.
Right.
I don't have some SP, some suppressive in my life. I feel fine. So what's the problem? Everything's great. I could walk through a room full of COVID patients and I'd be fine because I'm not PTS. This is the level of delusion that they tell themselves because this is the indoctrination in Scientology on that point. So in setting the stage for this, this is the thing that you're having to overcome amongst many other mental barriers. But this is a real big one in Scientology.
Yeah, was a huge one. So then mid-March, or like right at the end of March, shortly after about this whole issue that David Miscavige put out.
Well, why don't you tell us what happened?
Okay,
yeah.
So there was an issue that he put out because basically there's an event every year for L. Ron Hubbard's birthday, and it takes place at Flag in Clearwater, and there's thousands of bunch of Scientologists come to that, and it's a big thing.
And then it's telecast to the world. Yeah.
So at the last minute, that event didn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
So then he put out an issue talking about the whole COVID thing, and I don't even remember all the wording. I know it's online somewhere. You could probably put a link to it if anybody wants to see it, because it got online, which I thought was very funny.
Yep. But what was your impression of it? What did it say?
My impression was that, okay, this is happening and it's a thing, but it's gonna pass. It's just another planetary bull bait, dramatization, whatever. It's gonna pass, right? And then shortly after that, I think like a week or so, or a couple weeks after that, was when we all got called in to a meeting, and it was like, okay, so the org is closing temporarily. No, the org's going to close. I think it was supposed to be 2 weeks. Org's going to close.
And that was within a week or two of this actually starting.
Yeah. That was a quick decision. Right at the end of March.
Okay.
That was like, because it was March 13th event, didn't happen, issue out. About a week and a half to 2 weeks later was when, okay, that's it. The org's closing. Everyone's going to the apartments. We're going to work on call-in and IS, calling people, selling books via the phone. It was like a whole thing, right?
Right. See, it's very interesting because call-in is a term in Scientology for calling people
to come
into the building. Yeah. And we still call it call-in, even though that's really not what you're doing anymore, right? It's very funny. Had the protocols yet arrived? No. Okay, we'll get to that.
No,
okay,
the protocols didn't arrive yet.
So you're closing the org. Now, orgs don't close. And I lost many nights of sleep because of that. So what was your guys', because my response would have been, are you fucking kidding me?
Yeah, we were like, are you fucking kidding me? We're like, really? Okay, so you might have noticed a quick break there. We had a little costume change. As we go into part 2 of this part 2 podcast, in a completely new day and time here for us, but you guys are getting it all in one feed. So there you go. And here we go. We left off talking about you were out in Columbus, and one fine day in March of 2020, the world changed. That's right.
As we all know. And things changed for you in the world of Scientology. So let's just go ahead and pick it right back up from there.
Okay, so what happened was we were told that the org was going to close temporarily. Actually, we were told, I think 2 weeks. It's supposed to be 2 weeks that the org closed.
2 weeks we're going to close.
Yeah, 2 weeks. 2 weeks max.
That must have been shocking news.
Yeah, it was totally shocking.
Yeah.
Everybody was like, huh?
Right. I mean, you guys have heard me go on at length about how the measures we would take to keep the doors open of small, struggling, failing orgs through the years. So the principle was always, and it is a Hubbard datum, you don't close orgs, period. So COVID was uprooting, right from the beginning, it was uprooting Scientology.
Yeah, because this was all the orgs. This wasn't just us. This was everybody closed. So, and we were told everybody's going to go to the apartments, basically sell extension courses, still work on regging income, IAS, service sales, whatever we can do on the phone, book sales, whatever we can do, right? So we all went to the apartments.
Wow.
And at first it was, okay, everyone's going to, muster, and you have your little groups, and this group is going to muster in this apartment. And then we're all on a schedule, and we have production, and then we have study and whatever, cleaning and whatever. Right.
Right.
So that went for like a day or two. And then it was like, no, actually, no, you're not supposed to go in other people's apartments.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Start putting 2 and 2 together in this new situation.
Yeah.
Right.
So no one's allowed to go in anyone else's apartment, period. You can only associate with your roommates that
Right.
you're in the apartment.
And there's
with.
4 per apartment.
Yeah, 4 people. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, people would still have little meetings outside and whatever and socially distanced, but as far as like everyone going in one apartment, no, that was a no-no.
All right.
So it was very different from being in the org around everybody to being around just 3 people that you're roommates with. It was interesting. So yeah, so we did that. So then everybody was on whatever they were on, call in and whatever, right? And it was actually very extroverting, because after a while, people started going on walks, because it's like you're sitting around your apartment, you're gonna go stir crazy, right? You can't.
Right.
You can't. No, you can't.
Well, some of us might understand what that felt like.
Yeah. So the qualsec was like, yeah, it's fine. Take a walk if you need to take a walk. And so people were walking all over the place. Right. And I would go for like hours on walks. It was awesome. It was so great. It was like the most outside time I've gotten in like a long time.
That is so funny.
It was so great. I loved it.
That is so funny.
So then, so I was working on doing ads and whatever I could on the internet, right? And so what I did was I got interested in the org's Facebook page, and which I couldn't access because I wasn't on Facebook, right? So because you have to have a Facebook page to get to Facebook. Right. So
you didn't have any social media presence of your own. And yet but your org has a Facebook page.
Yeah. And I was the Dirt Public promo, and I could not access it.
Okay. Who could access it?
The DSA, and I believe the Dirt PR. I'm not exactly sure if she could or not. I think she could later on, but it was just the DSA.
Got it.
It's the only one.
All right. So OSA, the OSA guys.
Yeah.
We love them.
Yeah. That was Facebook and Instagram, because
they're connected.
Thing too. Yeah.
Okay. So you're reaching towards social media now.
Yeah. Because I was like, oh, I have this great idea. I can see what our Facebook page looks like, and then I can look at all these other orgs, and I can see like how we can make ours better. Mm-hmm. So I was like, oh, this is so cool. So I'm just gonna make a bogus Facebook account, right?
This is almost exactly the same kind of logic that got me on the internet as a Scientologist, as a Sea Org member, is how can I use this to increase or better the Scientology promotional scene, or get ads or whatever out there. I was out there doing recoveries, but I was very frustrated about the fact that there was no good news about Scientology out there. Yeah. So I thought, let's check it out.
Yeah, and it never made any sense to me as the Dirt Public promotion. I couldn't do anything with the org's Facebook page. I'm like, that's like prime real estate for promotion. You know what I mean? I was like, this is so dumb. So then I made a bogus Facebook account, and I started looking at like other orgs' Facebook accounts, and I just started like poking around, right? And then after a few days, I was like, oh my God, I could find some old friends of mine.
Ding.
That's kind of cool.
Little light bulbs going on. Yep.
I'm like, I'm here in the apartments, I'm talking to people. Hey, I could find some old friends. Maybe I could sell some books. I was like, this was my thought, right? Mm-hmm. So then, I sent out some friend requests of people I found, right? And somebody answered me, who was a very good friend of mine in high school, which was almost 30 years ago. Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
And he answered, and he definitely remembered me, and I remembered him, and we started talking. And I mean, I started just just talking like normal. Like I didn't start like anything, oh, this is all the bad stuff that's happening or anything like that.
Right.
I was just like, hey, how's it going? And we just like,
just socially catching up.
Started talking about our
years.
lives. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so he was asking me questions and I was asking him questions and I was telling him, I'm still in Scientology. I'm out here in Columbus actually. And he happened to be on the East Coast. So we're on the same time. And so he just started, he started asking me more and more. And I was sort of trying to like disseminate to him, maybe sell him a book. And he's just like, no, I'm not interested. I'm only interested how it affects you.
Right.
I'm not really, no, it's not, no, that's okay. It's not my thing. Like he didn't like say anything bad about it or anything or like totally reject it to upset me. But he was just like, no, I'm just interested how it affects you. How does it affect you?
Right.
Like, what do you like about it specifically?
So he was asking you a lot of questions.
Yeah. He was asking me a lot. So then,
this is how you get people in these kind of situations to open up is you ask them questions. You don't tell them what to think.
Right. Or you don't tell them what you read about it.
Exactly.
Or you don't say, oh, how about Xenu?
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just putting it out there,
and
folks.
He actually, I found out later, he actually he didn't know hardly anything about it. He only knew that I was involved and he had seen a few documercials and a few things over the years on TV and whatever. And he's just like, I'm not really interested. But then he would always think about me when he saw it. He's like, oh yeah, she's in it.
Exactly.
And that was the extent of what he knew about it.
Right. Well, and so what we're really talking about here is he just decided to be a decent fellow.
Yeah.
About it, right?
Yeah,
and
totally.
just respect you and be interested in you. And
totally.
Oddly, that opened you up and you guys were actually talking as real human beings.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Oddly, people respond to that. Yes. It's very strange.
Exactly.
Yes. Anyway,
so then in the middle of this, about, I don't know, a week or two after I started talking to him, I started having a really bad pain in my side. Actually, no, it didn't start my side. It started like right here. And my chest was like, my chest was getting really, really tight. And this happened several times. I had like this attack. And so I got an assist and did different things. And I thought maybe I was dehydrated. And I think it was the third time that it happened, but it was really, really bad. And I got really scared actually, because it was like in my chest. Like I was like, am I having a heart attack? I'm too young to have a heart attack. This is ridiculous. So, and I told the call sec, I'm like, I think I should go to the doctor. And she's like, oh, okay, well, let's see if we can handle it with the assist, because it's not good if we have anyone sick.
Right.
They didn't want to report that anybody was sick, even if it wasn't a COVID thing. They didn't want to report it.
Right.
Unless
Not to mention you
had to.
Exactly. Plus, you're encouraged in this kind of behavior by bulletins Hubbard wrote called "Solve It with Scientology."
Right.
Right, which actually actively encourages, no, don't go for the medical, go for the Scientology. So.
I mean, I freaked out in the middle of the assist, in the middle of one of the assists. And I started having a panic attack, and I made the person stop the assist. I'm like, go get the call sec. I need to go to the doctor. She's like, okay, let's see what we can do. The way out is the way through. All this like stuff that they tell you, right?
Yep.
And then, I mean, it did dissipate after several hours. I think it was like 3 hours or something. I was like in complete agony. And then finally, I think after like the third or fourth time this happened, I woke up super early in the morning and I was like throwing up, and I called the call sec. I'm like, this is ridiculous. I need to go to the doctor. She's like, okay, yeah, we're going to take you to the ER.
Yeah.
So then I went to the ER on Mother's Day, funny enough. Anyway, it's random. And they did a bunch of tests, and then they told me, so you have gallstones and you have actual blockage, where something tries to go into your gallbladder and so it can process it and come out, and it's actually like it's blocked, and that's what's creating the problem. So every time you eat, the body's trying to process something, it's like, oh, nope, can't do it. Mm-hmm. So, of course, I wasn't allowed to eat anything since I arrived in the hospital. So I felt a lot better. Anyway, so then they're like, and we need to take it out because it's been proven by, statistical wise, it's just going to keep creating problems. Like we can handle whatever, and but it's just going to keep creating problems, and you can live just fine without it. So I'm like, okay.
Wow. Full organ removal.
Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah. And that happened. Like, I actually got the surgery like 2 days later. And that was a pretty traumatic experience for me, because I had never had any anesthesia. I'd never had any sort of operation, anything. I've never been under, and never anything.
Wow. Never anything.
Nope.
Not root canal.
Nope.
Nothing.
Nothing.
Wow.
Absolutely nothing. This is my
First time. Here you go. All right.
during COVID.
Wow.
No less.
Yeah, that's right. Damn.
I actually got a really good room in the hospital because they had to keep me away from the COVID patients. So
Of course. Good timing.
yeah, right.
Do you happen to know, just because I'm curious, do you happen to know how this got covered, how this got paid for? I mean, Scientology doesn't exactly have health insurance.
The day after the surgery, actually somebody from the hospital called me and was like, do you have insurance? And I was like, no, I don't think so. And then he helped me go through the whole thing with, I guess, Medicaid or whatever it is, Medicaid, Medicare, whatever it is you get on when you have like no income.
Okay. I'm not sure myself which one it is. I know one's for old people and the other one's for low income or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
It somehow splits up that way.
So he literally helped me get on that and got all my information and got me signed up for it. And I didn't have to pay anything.
Got it.
I saw what the bill would have been. The bill would have been like $20,000 or something.
Right.
Ridiculous.
Right.
It's like, whoa, okay.
Right.
So yeah.
Money that Scientology as an organization absolutely has.
Oh yeah.
But not for its staff members.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
I mean, it was literally like, wasn't even part of the picture to go try to get that money from the org.
Oh no. No, not at all.
It was just not even in the cards. That wasn't even an option.
No.
So that's why I got curious about it all of a sudden. I was like, wait a minute, how do you cover this?
Yeah.
But this is exactly how we were covered on the low income route, or no income route, when we would go to LA County Hospital. When I was on the RPF, I found out all about this. And Sea Org members who routinely would need anything would go there, and they had a whole line grooved in. All you had to do was, I'm from Scientology, and then, okay, here you go.
Yeah.
You know, it was all just kind of set up.
Yeah.
But the Church of Scientology, of course, is perfectly able to pay. It just refuses to. So anyway, please continue.
I mean, I did hear that there was health insurance for the org. Not
really.
When I was in ILO, I heard there was some sort of health insurance. It was a new thing that they started doing. I don't know the specifics, but I did hear about it because there was a whole thing that they were doing with financial planning, and they kept cutting back the MLO fund, and then they're like, everybody needs to be on the CSI health insurance or something. I don't even. I don't know, because I never did anything major on it, so I don't have the specifics on that.
How interesting. You know, this is the only hint I've ever heard of this.
Really? It was very new. It was very new. It wasn't like, it was.
I can't help but wonder, and I'm only going to wonder out loud, and we'll move on. But I can't help but wonder if this is yet another reaction or response to the incredibly negative PR the church has when it comes to staff welfare.
Yeah.
I mean, I and others have gone, Leah, certainly, at length about how the staff are not taken care of. The church just dumps them on a corner, which has happened. Yeah. And so I wonder, I just can't help but wonder, but I would need a lot more information on this.
I don't have anything else other than just sort of hearing about it and being like, oh, wow, okay, we have health insurance now. And this was before I left LA.
Interesting.
So, and it didn't extend to being in Columbus. So.
Right. Interesting. But we certainly had nothing called healthcare or health insurance when I was there. Yeah. Okay, fair enough. So so you did get the hospital, you get the surgery.
Yeah, I got the surgery, recovered from went home to recover from the surgery, went back to the apartments. And I was, it actually didn't take that long to recover from the actual surgery, but I was so messed up on my sleep that I couldn't sleep properly for like several months. And I kept waking up. I would wake up at like 1 o'clock in the morning and couldn't sleep until like 7.
Wow.
And I ended up getting a migraine for like 80% of the time. I had a migraine headache and I just could not get rid of it. And so I would try, for the first couple of weeks, I would try to sleep in because I'd be awake all night. And then all of a sudden I'd be able to sleep. So I'm like, oh God, I can sleep a little bit. So then I try to sleep in, and I was allowed to do that for like maybe a week. And then the qual sec was like, no, you can't sleep in anymore.
Of course not.
Like, finally came down on that. And she's like, no, you can't sleep in because it's not per the schedule.
That's right. You got to follow that schedule.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially when you're in the apartments. Not doing much of anything.
Not doing a whole lot of anything.
Yeah,
but
it's
yes.
very important that you wake up on time
Yes.
so you can sit in your apartment and not do much of anything.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Makes a lot of sense.
Very important.
So, yeah. That's so ridiculous.
If there's one thing about the Sea Org,
I was so mad. That was actually another like sort of like breaking point for me at that point. I was just like, because I had already gone through so much physically on various posts, especially when I was in the galley. I went through like a lot of stuff and, paid for my own chiropractic half the time and just tried to, get things handled that were very not pleasant.
right.
So, and got told how there was no money or whatever. Or I was just dramatizing, or you just need to get assists or whatever. Or you need to eat better, or just all these things that you get told so they don't have to spend any money on you.
That's right. And that's that is what happens is they will throw anything and everything against the wall. Any excuses. Well, you're not sleeping in. Well, you're not this. Well, you're not that. I mean, they just don't even care. It's just, well, I know what's wrong, and it's this because it can't be that it's something really wrong.
Yeah, because and even if you have an MLO that does care about the staff and does want to like help people, she doesn't get enough money. So what is she supposed to do? Like, I remember specifically hearing how the MLO money got cut, like so much, like really, really bad. And plus she had like cancer patients that she was, you know what I mean? It was
right.
Yeah.
No, I've actually at the continental level, at the West US level, I'd sat in those FP meetings from time to time, and it was routine. I mean, the head of the financial planner would be like, "Well, they're going to get assists this week.
Yeah,
and that's it because we don't have the money. Cut it."
Yeah,
it was just routine.
And it was also routine that they're always redoing. I don't know if this was the case at the CLO, but I was always hearing how the financial planning, number one, like the core financial planning, it was always being redone.
Yep.
It was always being redone, and it was always being rejected, and it was always being redone. Like for years, it was being redone.
Yeah. If there is one thing that is consistent about Scientology, it is the inconsistency and sort of mysterious ways of the finance lines, the way the money works.
Yeah.
Nobody's ever really totally sure what's going on, and I'm absolutely 1,000% positive that is by design. You do not want transparency and openness when it comes to cash flows in a money-making scam. You just want people thinking there's never enough money.
Yeah.
And at every level of Scientology, below the very top, that's how it is. The entire Sea Org and staff culture is all about scrounging and making do with never having enough. And all the money that does exist gets sent up the lines and it never comes back down. And that's been that way since the day I got out. I've been preaching that. Yeah. It's still that way.
It's still the case.
Yeah.
So I had that going on. So then a couple weeks after that, after the whole surgery thing, so pretty much all the staff had phones, right? At this point, because all you could do was call public. You couldn't see
and you had to have cell phones. You didn't do it with landlines.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No landlines in the apartments. I guess they could have done that, but that would have been really weird.
Yeah, set up a whole call center in the hotel.
Yeah. And the phones were not on any sort of like org network. Like if you go to PAC or if you go to the HCB or if you go to INT or FLAG, their cell phones are set up on this network so that security or whoever monitors the phones can see anything you send, any text, any call, anything. They can see your phone.
So, that makes sense. Yeah. That's the first I'm hearing about that. And that makes a lot of sense that they would set it up that way. Because you can't necessarily put a filter, which is what they would do with the laptops and everything, on everybody's phone. But now they've systematized it. So.
Yeah, and it was set up on the Android because on the Android you can apparently make it so you can disable the internet, and you can do this whole thing to put this tracking thing in the phone or whatever, right?
Right.
You can't do that in iPhones. So iPhones, you can have iPhones. So of course, when I got out, the first thing I did was buy an iPhone. The next day, I was like, I'm getting a phone. I'm getting an iPhone.
Yep. I hear you on that. Totally.
Yeah.
So interesting. But you guys out in Columbus were kind of on independent. I mean, you guys own these things.
Yeah, most of them were owned by the staff. There was a few that were owned by the org. Like the org would pay for certain select like reg type people that made a lot of money.
Right.
They would get their phone paid for. But people that didn't make that much money or just needed it to just do whatever they were doing, they paid for it themselves. Like I paid for my own phone. I paid for the plan, everything.
Right. And yet while you're out there, you're still on Sea Org pay only. Mm-hmm. So it's, was it $46, $46.75 or something?
46. Yeah, I think it's like 46.75.
Something like that.
With
after the tax is taken out.
Yeah, with all your Social Security that's taken out, Hey,
that's the Social Security I'm getting, folks. That is the Social Security I'm getting.
Yeah, same here.
So yeah.
There you go.
Exactly. That's our retirement plan.
Yeah.
So, okay, so you're making $46.75 a week or whatever, and that's your whole pay. That's all you got.
That's right.
And you're paying for a cell phone with that.
Yeah. So all the staff had phones. So and I was living with another Div 6 staff member. I was living with the former FBO of the org. She was now holding a cafe, I see. Because she wasn't allowed to be on finance. She wasn't allowed. She was a really good reg, actually. She wasn't allowed to be on any finance type.
Is that because she was involved in the whole? She was one of the finance people.
She was, but she didn't do anything really outrageous. But she was still told how she couldn't reg. She couldn't ask people for money. She absolutely could not be on finance lines or asking anybody for money. She never got a ComEv, never anything. Just kind of like not really clear.
See, isn't that really interesting? Like, how do you handle an organization-wide criminal fraud that spans your entire organization, and you don't want to let everybody in on the fact that that's what you're doing, is putting a stop to a criminal fraud operation? Well, you just can't ever ask anybody for money ever again.
Yeah.
And of course, this is going to rub raw because the whole point of Scientology is to make money. All these people who are really good at it suddenly can't do it.
Exactly. And she would help on reg cycles like all the time.
Right.
Like she would do a lot like that.
Yeah.
Because she was a good reg. So what are you going to do? Like just tell her. And she liked doing it. She liked talking to the public. She liked helping the public and whatever, right? So, okay, and then I had another roommate who was in Div 6 who was like all over book selling and getting new public in, right? So she was in contact with this public who actually was somewhere in Colorado, funny enough. Mm-hmm. And this guy was like totally like in love with her, and she was always trying to be like, no, you can't send me a birthday present. No, you can't. Like, because she would just get in trouble, right? If that
saw
was
this
the case.
So many times, by the way, over the years. I saw so many of the good-looking regs, salespeople, right? Especially the women.
Yeah, and this was the host. This was the info center host. So she was like this cute little blonde girl,
right?
You know what I mean? And everybody loved her,
right? I'd say you just get these guys. You just get these like stalker types.
Yeah.
It happens.
So and she had a very big heart, and so she was always trying to help this guy make sure he was on course and make sure he was like, moving along and doing okay in life and whatever. So she would talk to him every once in a while. And he at one point was not doing well at all and was very mentally unstable. And he told her that he was going to kill himself because he couldn't be with her. Mm-hmm. So she freaked out and she was like, oh my God, what do I do? So she immediately goes to HCO and reports the whole thing. And she gets in a bunch of trouble. Of course she gets in trouble because this guy wants to off himself, right?
Yeah. She gets in trouble. Yeah. Should anybody call the guy and make sure everything's okay with him?
There was apparently a phone call to him, like one phone call to him. And then I think he was like dead filed, like totally gotten off the lines. We don't know this guy. Don't have anything to do with it. Yeah.
We're not here to help people who actually have problems. We're here to make the able more able.
Right.
Yeah. Code word for able is those with money. Who aren't depressed, suicidal, anxious, or suffering from any other number of
Yeah,
problems.
because you don't want to connect any of that to Scientology because that's like the worst thing ever.
That's right.
Right?
Exactly. It's horrible PR.
Yeah.
Right.
So as a result of this, I hear that all the phones are going to be taken and inspected, right? And I knew this because she was my roommate, so I happened to hear. I think my other roommate was like, "Just so you know, they're going to take all the phones." I'm like, "Oh, interesting. Okay."
Yeah. Should we clarify that this is a standard operating overreaction?
Yeah. That's totally standard.
Yeah.
Like one thing blows up, and it's like investigate everybody.
Right.
And make sure there's no other situations.
That's right.
Type thing. So I can just imagine what happened when I left. God, these poor people. I mean,
and it's just the system. It's just the way it works.
I know.
It's a paranoid snitch culture. So this is the behavior.
I felt bad about. I specifically felt bad about a few people that I knew were going to be in a lot of trouble. I'm just, I'm really sorry.
Yeah, I hear you.
So I hear the phones are going to get taken. So then I just delete all my texts with my friend, right? I'm just like, no.
Now, he had not been bad-mouthing Scientology.
No, he hadn't been bad-mouthing Scientology. There was nothing going on except we were talking to each other, and we were very good friends, and we were talking a lot.
Right.
And we were texting, and we were talking, and like a lot. And like within like several weeks, he talked to me when I was in the hospital because he was on a night shift or night schedule. So he was up like really late, and I couldn't sleep. So I'd be like, oh, I have somebody to talk to.
Right.
Freaking out in the hospital by myself.
So under any circumstances that, probably anybody listening or watching would understand, there's nothing wrong here. There's no moral transgressions. There's no, flirty even. It's
Except
not.
we were probably talking too much. You know what I mean?
Well,
And
that's where I was going, right?
That would be, yeah, you're talking to, why are you talking to this guy so much? Why are you telling him all this stuff about your life and asking all that?
Exactly. Why don't
You're getting way too personal.
Well, explain the concept of, please, an external influence.
Oh, external influence is anybody who talks to you or who you talk to outside of the organization, who you tell, personal details to, or problems, your personal problems, or any problems you have with the organization, or you're getting any sort of support, money, anything from somebody who's not in the organization.
Right. And in this case, that being the C organization, right? So very cloistered private club.
Yeah.
And external influences are not just frowned upon, they are actively policed.
Oh, yeah. There's a whole course you can take to handle external influences.
That's right. Well, if you're caught being externally influenced, they make you do that.
Yeah.
And then you have to go through this whole thing and go, oh, I'm not really supposed to have friends and minimal relations even with family outside of the C organization.
Yeah. And you can never tell anybody that you're unhappy or not doing well, or, my post sucks, I got a ComEv. You can't ever tell this to anybody outside of the C org. Oh my God. No way.
That's right. Anything basically that I think we maybe agree that anything that would create even the slightest hint of an unfavorable impression of what's going on inside the C organization would be absolutely verboten communication.
That's right.
And we will punish you, cut you off, and not permit you to communicate outside the organization before we would allow you to say those things.
Yeah.
Take a look at the creed of the Church of Scientology, then check that out, right? So, and we of the church believe that all men have inalienable right to think freely, talk freely, write freely their own opinions, and counter or utter a right upon the opinions of others.
Something
unless you're a Sea Org member.
Something that always made me wonder was the human rights.
Yeah.
All the human rights points that they push, because if you really read all of those and you watch the videos and stuff, you're like, wow, I don't have most of these in the Sea Org. That's interesting. I don't feel like I have a lot of these. And you feel so weird. You're like,
yes.
So we're pushing this, but yet, that doesn't make any sense.
Isn't that a weird feeling?
Like right to your own, like for example, like the right to your own things, right?
Yes.
Somebody just takes your phone that belongs to you.
That's right.
Or takes whatever other device or laptop or whatever.
That's right.
Kindle, whatever. They did this whole thing. They actually did this whole thing early on in Columbus, they went through everyone's apartments and they took all their devices. And they didn't tell any of the staff that they did this. They just took all their devices. And I had an old iPod in one of my drawers that I had photos on, and it had like a cracked screen and whatever. I hadn't gotten around to like transferring it to anything that was decent. And it disappeared. And I was like, God, where did I put that? Where did I put that? I wondered a couple times. And then like a year later, the INR was like, oh, by the way, I think this is yours. I'm like, yeah, that's mine. Cool. Okay.
And this was in Columbus or back?
Columbus. No, this is
really?
in Columbus. This was prior to. Actually, they took it like before the whole COVID thing, and then they just had them for like months and months and months, and then finally, like almost a year later, you got it back or something.
Just some random order, I guess, to go in and do that.
Yeah.
This is not dissimilar to the story I've told about how in PAC, I won't go into big thing here, but they came through one day, security being they, on the orders of RTC, and were ordered to take every single movie, DVD,
I heard about
or
that.
VHS, right? Anything, and remove it. And they did. And they shoved them all into plastic bags and put it all down in the basement. Everybody, the entire base. Overnight, nobody owned any movies anymore. And this was done because somebody was caught watching a movie in the middle of the afternoon. One person gets caught, the entire base gets punished.
Yeah.
And nobody could see or do anything with movies. I mean, it was ridiculous for the longest time.
Now you can just download them on the device. It's like,
exactly.
doesn't matter anymore.
Exactly. But, back then,
yeah.
it's just the, the demonstration of a complete contempt for the concept of private property in the Sea Org. It doesn't exist. You are the property in the Sea Org is basically how they treat you.
Oh, I had a flash drive one time when I was in the ILO. I had a flash drive, and I had a whole bunch of movies on the flash drive. And I left it in some computer or something. Somehow the DIRCOM saw it, and he was like, why does she have all these movies? And he deleted them. He deleted my freaking movies. I'm like, you asshole.
Mm-hmm.
She shouldn't have these movies when the org is in the condition that it is. I'm like, you don't even know if I was watching them. I just had them.
That's right.
Oh my God.
That's how it is. That is par for the course.
Oh my God.
A guy, an ethics guy, an MAA guy, whatever, they'll come through and feel completely entitled to take books out of your room, movie, anything they want. It's their judgment, and you don't matter. Anyway, so continuing with this pleasant environment.
Yeah. Anyway, so then they took everyone's phone, inspected everyone's phone, and within like a day or so, because there's not that many staff and it didn't take them that long. Plus they had to get everybody back on production, right? And I wasn't really worried because I'm like, okay, there's nothing on there, and you know what I mean? Like, I'm not doing anything weird. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna get it back. And then so I get told, you're not getting your phone back. And the reason given was because I was talking to all these people in LA.
Sea Org members
in LA, friends of mine. And I was talking to them on production time, and I didn't need a phone. You don't need a phone.
Yeah.
Meanwhile,
person who's responsible for the org's promotion and marketing campaigns doesn't need a phone.
Right.
Right. That makes sense.
And I was so mad. That was like the maddest I've ever been about one of my devices being taken. I was so pissed. Mm-hmm. But I wasn't outwardly pissed because I was like, okay, if I get bad, it's just going to create a whole thing. Okay, fine. So I was inwardly pissed. And I hadn't turned in, they said to turn in your phone. So I hadn't turned in my iPod. So an iPod is basically, you can use an iPod as a phone. You can text, you can call, you can do whatever you can on a phone, right? As long as you have Wi-Fi.
Yep. So
then I told my friend, I was so mad that I told him what happened. I'm like, just so you know, my phone got taken. And he's like, what do you mean it got taken? Someone stole your phone? I'm like, yeah, no, it's kind of hard to explain, but I explained it. I explained it in a nutshell. I don't think I gave him the whole story, but I told him how, every once in a while, our phones get taken, they get inspected. He's like, what? Mm-hmm. What? That's weird. I'm like, no, actually, yeah, it is kind of weird, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Once somebody else points it out to you.
Yeah.
You're like, wait a minute.
And I was actually thinking at the time, I'm like, I'm going to tell him and I'm just going to see what he says, what he thinks. Because up until this point, I'd never told anybody anything, anything negative about the organization or any negative feelings that I felt or doubts that I had or anything. I never told anyone. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So then I told him and he was just like, yeah, that's wrong. Was it your phone or did it belong to the organization? I'm like, no, it was mine. Paid for the phone, paid for the plan. Still got a month on the plan that I paid for that I can't now use. Yeah.
Yeah.
So then the conversation just continued like that because I was really, really visibly upset and he could tell that I was upset. And I was just like, I've just about had it and I'm just about ready to do something else. And he's like, wow, okay, well, what do you want to do? And it just, the conversation continued sort of in that vein for a while and, different aspects of it and whatever.
Well, you were clearly being so heavily externally influenced.
Yeah.
I mean, obvious. It's obvious what the out ethic situation is here, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sure Os is taking notes here. Yeah.
Right. I'm probably going to outlaw iPods now.
Oh, whatever.
No Apple devices. Watch. That'll be the next thing that we hear about from the next person that comes out. No Apple devices are permitted. I bet you anything. I'll bet you a freaking Starbucks coffee.
Bookmark it, folks.
Yeah.
He's probably right. All right. So they have dared to do this. Now, this is now actually not just a nail in the coffin. You're literally now thinking, I'm fucking done with this shit.
Yeah, I'm just about done with this. Between being told that I couldn't sleep, I wasn't allowed to sleep, basically, after being fucked up after having major surgery. And then this happens. And then shortly after that, shortly after that, there was a whole blow up on sort of the promotion lines because I had been running, prior to the org closing, I was running what's called the non-existence campaign.
Right. Can you explain that briefly?
So that is basically when a new org opens, it automatically gets, I think it's $250,000 I think it's $200,000 or $250,000.
It sounds about right.
Of promotion money. Mm-hmm. Not just promotion money. It's for a specific campaign and it's supposed to be surveyed and all this stuff worked out to like really, get the org out there and like show the whole area. This is the org, come on in, basically.
Right.
So you get TV spots. You get like a special video made by S&P of the org, showing the org and inviting people in. You get pre-made radio spots. You get like ads that you can put in newspapers and magazines and whatever.
And all of this is supposed to be tailored for your specific organization, not generic promo for every Scientology church.
Right. It's supposed to have the buttons of the area and what's going to bring people into the org that way, right?
Right. And it's called non-E or non-existence because you're getting yourself known to the neighborhood, to the city, to your area.
Right.
Yeah.
So I was running that campaign as the Dirt Public promo. And of course, when the org closed, we stopped everything because the org wasn't open. So it's telling people come in the org's not open. So we're like, no, stop everything. Put it all on hold.
Yep.
So I stopped everything except I was still running some book ads.
Makes sense.
Because I was like, okay, well, we're going to sell books.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to keep the book ads going, right? So this was apparently not coordinated. Totally not okay. Total financial crime. Yeah.
Running book ads was a finance crime.
Yeah, because I used the money from the Nani campaign idea and didn't have someone's approval. Meanwhile, I was doing this whole campaign and it was turned over to me from the mission that was there. The ED never had anything to do with it, really. The FBO never had anything to do with it. I was doing it myself. I was doing everything.
And it was your job.
Yeah. And all of a sudden, it was like, oh, you didn't coordinate any of this. You were told to stop everything. Mm-hmm. And I had taken it upon myself. I'm like, no, I'm going to keep the book ads going. I think that's pretty smart. Right? So.
Apparently not.
Apparently it wasn't very smart.
Nope.
So I got in a bunch of trouble for this, and I got at that point there was some people, there was staff that would go into the org sometime. Like the org was closed, and there was staff like there was a few staff that lived at the org at the time it was closed.
Right, because when they closed the org, some staff stayed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like the ED and DSA and some estates people and some of the networks stayed in the org. So then sometimes there'd be staff who would go into the org to, see the ED or have a meeting or whatever. Just like a few people would go in, would have okay to go in, right? And this was when the org was about to open up and, well, not open, but it was about to be okay for all the staff to go back.
Okay, so around what time are we talking?
This was mid-June.
Okay.
Yeah, this is mid-June.
All right. So you guys have been over in the hotel full time for a couple months now.
Yeah.
March, April, May.
Apartments, yeah.
Or apartments, yeah, sorry. So you're over there, and then a couple months go by, and now, maybe we can get back into the org.
There's like a little bit of a trickle of people going in. So, and the point on that is that I was called into the org to go and see the FBO and the ED, and they were like really pissed about this whole thing about me running these book ads, right? And so, and I had some email correspondence with one of our media people because I was running these ads with like iHeart was running these ads for me, and because there was like online ads and they were running them. And I had a little bit of email correspondence. And so I was trying to explain the different conversations that we were having and how I'd come to start doing this, right? And how much money I'd used and whatever. And I think I was still messed up from the whole operation. Because there was something going on, I think, with like my short-term memory or something. Because I was like, I don't remember what the conversation was. Like with this, like prior to, like right before the org closing or right as the org closed, I was having all these conversations, right? About the ads with media people. And I couldn't remember. So the ED was asking me all these questions and I could not remember. I'm like, I don't know what's going on. Plus I was like hardly sleeping and, I hadn't had anesthesia or anything. So I think it was sort of affecting me. In like a very bad way because I was like, I don't remember. And she just was like, oh my God, just nailing me, right? And so I got really upset about that. And that was another thing where I was like, okay, this is bullshit. This is because I tried to say, I just had major surgery a few weeks ago. She was like, oh, I don't want to hear about your body problems. That sort of.
Yeah, there's no excuse.
You know how that conversation goes. You're like, well, I just had major surgery. I might have a little bit of a hard time with my memory, and I'm hardly sleeping. Oh, well, that's not an excuse.
That's right. Because a Phaeton knows.
Right. You're supposed to know exactly what you did.
That's right.
So anyway, that wasn't a very good conversation.
That didn't go well.
That didn't go well. She actually held a grudge against me for like the rest of the time I was there. Jesus Christ. She really did. She was a big grudge person.
Now, just to be super, super, super clear, and the reason why she was so pissed is not because she's against book ads, but because you used money from the non-E campaign on what was something that was not strictly speaking a non-E campaign item.
Well, no, it was non-E campaign.
It was.
But I was supposed to stop doing the non-E campaign because the org was closed.
And so book ads are somehow a crime?
Yeah.
Your ED was a fucking idiot.
Yeah, she was an idiot.
I mean, this is really, really idiot level. This is the person running the organization saying book ads,
Yeah.
Wow. I'm sorry. It's just the stupidity that strikes me from these things. It was illogical.
It was so illogical.
Wow.
It was,
How dare you?
So that was another thing that really got under my skin and really pissed me off. And I'm just like, okay, this is getting to be too much. And I told my friend about this. I just started telling him everything. I was just like, well, guess what happened now? Guess what?
Yeah.
And it was actually so great actually being able to tell somebody this stuff that was going on and not have to worry about how you're going to get a KR from your friend who you just vented to,
That's right. Exactly.
Oh my God.
Exactly. It's so liberating.
Yeah, exactly. So then the org, we went into like what was called like sort of phase one. The staff are going to go back in the org yet. It's not open to the public, but the staff are going to go back in and be able to work in the org and do call-in and do basically everything they're doing in the apartments back in the org.
Okay. And this is late June?
This was getting to be like end of June. Yeah.
Okay. And timing wise, I only point this out because this is still when lockdown's happening in the rest of the world. I mean, the rest of the world's not opening up.
Right.
But you guys are coming back into the building.
Yeah.
Was there some catalyst for that, or was it just a random, well, now we're just going to do this?
No, it was there was an issue out, and there was supposed to be certain stages of the orgs being able to open, and they had to have
this is when this comes down.
Yeah, they had to have certain, this is the whole protocols and
all of that.
All the issues on the protocols and the whole thing, and post 3 cleaners so they can clean with D7 18 times a day, and
now, isn't that interesting?
Fog every room in the org, even though they weren't used. It was so ridiculous. It was so over the top of ridiculousness.
April, May, June. It takes 4 months for Scientology to figure out internationally what to do about this.
Yeah.
Write the issues, make the manuals or whatever, and send them down to you guys.
Yeah.
Okay, and this is now supposed to be a phased
Yeah, it was
activity.
supposed to be done in phases.
Okay.
So then there was a few cleaners that got posted, and we all had to, before we went back in the org, we all had to read the issues on the protocols, mask, gloves, social distancing. We all had to, when we started going back in the org, we all had a cleaning checklist for our office that we had to drill this cleaning checklist 5 times or something and do every single thing on it, and this was, anyway, it was a little bit ridiculous.
Yes, I imagine it was. Must have been a little reminiscent of EPF stuff.
Oh, it was much worse.
Oh, except that? Oh, actually worse.
It was much worse.
Okay, I was thinking about when we were learning how to polish the brass.
Oh, yeah.
It was like this whole checklist, and you had to. It was similar, but
no,
yeah.
This was dust, and then D7, and then after D7, you have to put water on everything. You have to wash off the D7. Yeah.
What would be the point?
Because it leaves
kill everything.
Yeah, because it leaves a residue. I mean, it's probably already wrecking everything in the orgs anyway.
Yeah.
Because it is strong stuff, but so it leaves a residue. So you're supposed to wipe. You're supposed to put water on it afterwards.
Okay.
So we all did that. We all read the issues. We went back in the org for a briefing, and that's at the point where we were told if anyone gets sick, you're going to get a comment.
Okay, so that's when that word comes down.
Yeah.
Okay, so now I'm curious about this because this is one of those moments that are pivotal in a way. This is absolutely foundational. Is if you have some non-optimum situation, you got a PTS condition.
Yeah.
And now you're being told, oh yeah, no, that's not what's going on. You're going to get this COMEV. It's called a committee of evidence, and it is a very severe form of justice in Scientology. It's basically equivalent to charging you with criminal charges and bringing you into a court. It's a Scientology court, which means it's a kangaroo court, but that's the equivalent. You are in a lot of trouble if you're getting COMEV. It is not a small thing. Nobody just breezes through a COMEV. So if it's a COMEV offense to now get sick, this is unheard of. It's unprecedented in Scientology's history that this would be a punishment, but it wasn't quite put that way.
Yeah, well, the initial briefing that we got was if you get sick, you will get a COMEV.
Yeah.
But what that turned into was if you get sick, that means you violated the protocols, which are in the issues, and you're getting COMEV'd for violating the protocols.
Right. So it becomes non-compliance.
Right.
Rather than getting sick.
Because obviously, if you wear a mask, if you wear gloves, and if you stay socially distanced, and if you D7 your shoes, and you follow all the D7 procedure.
Spray all your food and everything.
You didn't quite spray your food.
I know, it's just so ridiculous.
But actually, you were supposed to wash your clothes in D7. If you were outside of the org, I'm not kidding. When we started going outside of the org to sell books and do promo, we were supposed to change our clothes and wash our clothes in D7 when we came back. I did it a few times, and then I'm like, fuck this.
Right.
And you know what? I'm one of the few people in the org who never got sick. And I was out all the time.
You don't say.
And I did not get sick one time after COVID.
Kidding.
I'm not kidding.
I can't believe it. I totally believe it. Okay. It's just such. I'm only highlighting this to really point out the internal inconsistency, right? And the fact that, anyway, amongst many other things, that you can kind of reconcile yourself to almost anything if you just twist your thinking around. I mean, here is this foundational L. Ron Hubbard principle, and it's like, well, we're just going to throw that out the window right now, and everybody just kind of goes along with it, but kind of not really.
Yeah, kind of not really.
Exactly,
yeah,
right?
Exactly. That's why it turned into, I mean, after we received that initial, you're going to get a COMEV if you get sick, it morphed into, no, you're getting COMEV for violating the protocols. Right. But that took a little while.
Yeah, somebody had their thinking cap on figuring that one out.
About that. Actually, no, we're not going to COMEV you because you got sick. We're going to COMEV you because you obviously violated the protocols, and that's why you're sick.
That's right.
With anything, not just with COVID, with anything. Like if a girl throws up because it's that time of the month, she's going to get a COMEV. I know somebody who did, or she at least did conditions. I don't actually know she got a COMEV. Wow. I think she did get a COMEV.
Wow.
Anyway, yeah.
So it's kind of a big deal. It was massive change amongst many other things, right? Because there's also the whole COVID protocols.
Right.
I mean, you guys got to wear masks everywhere, but you also have to wear gloves everywhere.
Yeah, mask and gloves.
Right? Who was wearing gloves?
Nobody.
Who was wearing? Yeah,
Nobody.
Exactly. Except the Scientologists.
Except the weird Scientologists.
That's right.
I loved it. In the wintertime, I would just wear mittens when I was out.
Right.
I was like, screw this. I'm not doing this.
Did this was I'm not sure because I didn't look up the timing on this. Do you happen to know if the org was if Columbus as an org was trying to take advantage of the PPP loans?
I don't know. I had several people ask me about that. I don't know. I know that a lot of orgs got that.
Yeah.
I don't have specifics. I just happened to hear it somewhere. They did.
It was wondered out loud by somebody, and I thought it was interesting, so I thought I'd pick it up and echo it here. I saw it on a comment somewhere, maybe on Tony's blog or somewhere, I can't remember where, that perhaps one of the motivations for this intense COVID protocol thing was to show, hey, we're taking all this very seriously, and then maybe there was some idea that, let's get all the churches to go for PPP loans.
Yeah, that could be. I think the initial thing was, it was a whole freak out on because anytime there was a massive amount of people getting COVID or super spreader events or whatever, it was all over the media, right?
Right.
So I knew it would have been a major flap if it was 80 people got COVID at Church of Scientology, and they're trying to keep it out of the media as much as possible. I know.
And in their usual bungled up way, go the opposite extreme to the nth degree.
Yeah.
Right. And look like a bunch of weirdos.
Yeah. Plus, they had all these videos. They had all these videos on cleaning, which weren't bad. It was just a lot of it was common sense type stuff.
Yeah.
And could be actually very helpful to people that don't know that they should actually sanitize and whatever, regular sanitization, not the whole D7 thing. But they had all these videos, and then they had also this whole video that was done to show the whole thing of how they found D7 and started using the Decon 7 at Flag, and started going out to other churches or other public places and doing D7, and how is all this goodwill being created and whatever.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
This is interesting. It's the first I'm hearing about this.
That was part of the videos.
Well, this helps make a little bit of sense of this then, because clearly somebody, mistakenly, but somebody had the idea, here's how we can get Scientology in front of this.
Yeah.
And make it look like we're leading the way in society toward, solving this problem, because we're going to show everybody how to clean. Somebody had in the first few months of this, let's all remember, we were all a bunch of confused chickens. Nobody had it clear what the hell to do.
Right.
And so clearly this was an idea somebody was having that, we're going to lead the way.
Yeah.
With a very ill-conceived strategy.
Yeah. There was teams of staff from every single org that went out, and they got the booklets, the Stay Well booklets. They put them all over the place in stores and different places and stuff. Right. And then they had the videos going. So then once the org got okay to open and have the public coming in again.
And this is now August?
Yeah, this was, I think, mid-August the org opened.
Okay, so staff are coming back in on a regular schedule now.
So the staff were all coming in, and then at one point it was okay, you can have the public come in now. But they have to follow the protocols. They have to wear masks. They have to They have to wear gloves. They have to stay sort of socially distanced. And they were supposed to agree to do this also everywhere they went, not just in the org. Like they would come in, they would watch these videos. They would watch the Stay Well videos. They would watch, the videos on the D7 that was done and all this stuff, right? And then they would have to go through like this checklist and basically agree and attest that they're going to follow this so that they can be on service in the org.
Got it. So this was the series of conditions they now had to meet. Yeah. Okay. And it was expected that everybody was just going to come in, do all this, and go, oh, absolutely, yeah. Boom, boom. And
that didn't happen. That didn't happen. There was a lot of public that were like, screw that, I'm not doing that. And some people were like, really still afraid of going out at all because of COVID. So they're like, no, I'm not coming back in the org yet.
Right.
Some people were like, no, I'm not doing these protocols. Some people were like, okay, fine, I'll do it. But then they wouldn't do it. Like once they were out of the org, they wouldn't do it.
Right.
And that came up a couple times.
Oh, I swear I'll do it. Absolutely.
Yeah. So you had all different responses to this.
Could we get some estimate here based on at least your observation and the statistics? Like, let's take a look at this org for just a second. You guys are fired out there. How many Sea Org members were out there?
Started out with over 100 and different things happened. And it was probably like 80 or so when we opened back up.
Okay. I really lost a few people.
there was some people that there was this whole thing done like some of the elderly people went back to LA. I don't know what happened to them because it was like, oh, if you're over a certain age, then you're at risk for COVID. You have to stay in the apartment or you have to do full-time study. You can't be around anybody, whatever. Right. This is a whole thing in LA too. I heard about this in LA.
Really?
Oh, yeah. The older staff, they were kept out of the orgs for quite a while because I heard this because I worked in the galley and my dishwasher was like 67 years old or something. And I heard that he was at the birthing for like months and months. And I thought about it. And I'm like, I wonder what happened to all the OSA staff. All the OSA staff are like all over 60.
Are they?
A lot of the OSA in staff are like older people.
That is an interesting piece of information.
Maybe
because I get asked about OSA staff
or something.
Well, I get asked about OSA staff all the time, right? And if they're all a bunch of dinosaurs, that means they're not taking in new guys. That's interesting.
They took on very few new people because the quals for OSA are just like ridiculous. Like to get approved to actually be fully an OSA. Oh my God, I've seen it take forever. I've seen people be like OSA trainees forever and ever.
Damn, interesting. Probably another podcast there. Seriously, I have questions, but getting back to this narrative, okay, that's interesting about the old people. Yeah. So they were even flying them back out to LA rather than leave them out there. Okay, so you lost some people there. Around what range was your public, what's called bodies in the shop, people who actually come in and doing services?
It was around, when the org closed, it was around 100.
Okay, so this is not a great...
It fluctuated between like 80 and 100 people.
Okay, so this is about roughly the size that we got Twin Cities up to at its peak, was about 100 folks coming in. Okay, so comparable, but... Now, after the thing opens back up, you're calling people, come in. I'm sure there was a big rush or trying to make a rush. Yeah. How many people ended up back on service right away?
God, that's hard to say. I'd say maybe initially about maybe half the public came back in.
Really?
And because also... because the Purif and SRD were closed, there was we were big on SRD before COVID.
Right.
SRD was shut down.
Right. So this was my next question: is what could you deliver?
They did a lot. They tried to reg people for academy type stuff. Golden Age of Knowledge. They got a bunch of people in Golden Age of Knowledge, but some people are like, oh, whatever. I'll just do the extension course at home.
Right.
Well, I don't need to come in type thing.
All right. So not to get all cryptic here, because we're throwing in some Scientology service stuff around here, and no, not at all. You'd have to be intimately familiar with all the minutiae of Scientology to get all this stuff. What we're basically saying is that there are two mainline lower level services that churches like Columbus would concentrate on. the purification rundown, which is the detox, the sauna, sweat out thing, total bullshit, but people go for it in Scientology, and the SRD, which is the survival rundown. It used to be known as the TRs and objectives co-audit. Some of you might have heard that if you've been around for a while. And it's basically a service that allows public Scientologists to get in there, work with somebody else, do TRs, do low-level objective processing on one another, and actually make some progress on this beginning steps of this Scientology bridge. The Purif and the objectives are the first two major steps people take on their Scientology journey. And the orgs were not allowed to deliver those services when they opened back up. So they're
They also
scrambling.
couldn't do any TRs courses.
And no TRs courses because everybody had to be close.
You have to have people be too close.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. So none of that.
And I think that's still shut down.
It is.
Orgs, right?
No, across the planet right now, orgs are not delivering these services. So effectively, and this is an important point, August, they open up, and yet they can't deliver their mainline services that most of the public are doing. Mm-hmm. So they have to scramble to try to get them to do these other services just for the sake of being on service rather than actually dealing with the person in front of them and giving them what they want.
Yeah, exactly.
And somehow this is not supposed to have a negative consequence on any Scientologists, right?
Right.
But of course it does. So.
Yeah, it was definitely. So it was probably maybe about half the public came back in, and then maybe it went up to. I mean, I've heard this thing about maybe a third.
Yeah, there was the insider was talking about third. Like a third were like absolutely not. A third were like kind of on the fence, and a third were like absolutely I'm coming back in.
Yeah,
that was just his observation.
That sounds pretty close.
Yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
that sounds pretty
kind of how
close.
it.
Yeah,
worked
because
out.
I wasn't directly on public lines, so I don't really have the numbers.
Okay, fair enough.
But that sounds about right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, getting around an average of about 100 folks on a week pre-COVID definitely sounds about right.
Yeah.
Especially for a place like Columbus, right? So so these numbers are interesting, and I'm just kind of watching them and noting and being very interested in all of this. So because little things just keep coming up.
Yeah.
That just get in the way. They just keep getting in the way, getting in the way. And the public know these are unnecessary. They know they don't have to wear gloves.
Yeah. Plus, if they had any symptoms of anything, they would immediately not be able to come in the org anyway for 2 weeks until they.
Exactly.
I mean, it kept changing. First, it was like you have to go in quarantine for 2 weeks. And then it was like, oh, no, you just have to get a COVID test. And it changed. It evolved over the months. But
wasn't there some point pretty soon after this where a bunch of the staff got quarantined?
Oh, yeah, in October. Yeah, so
just another way of covertly closing the org or inadvertently.
Yeah, it was like 90% of the staff, including all the execs and the ED, went to quarantine for 2 weeks. I was one of the few people that were left in the org. Once again.
Symptom free.
Right. Yeah, symptom free. Except I had allergies a little bit, which I freaked out about and I didn't tell anybody, but I wasn't sick. I was never sick. So yeah, there's like 90% of the staff. And what happened was this was like, apparently some people had symptoms and didn't report it, or they were around the public that had symptoms and they were like, okay, fine. I was around you for 5 minutes or whatever. And it was a whole thing. And so anybody who had any sort of symptom, any sort of anything over the past couple of weeks, it was just like, okay, you're going to quarantine. You're going to quarantine. And it was literally like everybody was sent to quarantine.
So October must have been an interesting month.
Yeah, October was interesting. October was very interesting. Meanwhile, I was going out all the time and doing promo. And I was leaving promo, like I would leave promo in stores and
yeah, you were not doing direct handouts.
I wasn't we didn't hand
nobody's
out
doing that on the street.
No.
All right.
And plus I would go to the university and put posters up on the bulletin boards in the university because those were just endless because the OSU campus is so huge.
Yeah.
So many buildings. And I used to do that all the time. And so I was going out all the time. And during this time, I was talking to my friend every time I was out. And I started watching stuff online. I started watching.
On your iPod?
Yeah.
And what
Actually,
kind
I would
of things?
listen. I would listen while I was doing promo.
Okay.
I would listen.
Oh my God.
Because I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do. I was like, okay, I think I want to leave. I'm not sure how. I'm not sure when. Okay, so if I just leave, if I just take off, that means I'm not going to be in Scientology anymore. Okay, so do I really not want to be in Scientology anymore? Okay, let me dig into this a little bit and find out things that I wouldn't necessarily find out if I just, went to the ethics officer and said, I'm in down in Scientology, and or Sea Org or whatever, and down on the Sea Org, and I'm thinking of leaving, and okay, do a doubt formula. And of course, the doubt formula always leads you back to staying in Scientology or staying in the Sea Org.
Yes. Yeah. It's a very narrow path that is provided to you.
So I started listening to and watching a little bit. I was mostly listening to a lot of Aaron's videos. A lot of your videos, a few other ones I listened to, the Jason Begay interview, which was fascinating. Oh my God.
It's a great,
that was really good.
Beginning. It really does hit hard and it hits fast for those of us just coming out. I remember that one.
Yeah.
And there's a reason, I don't know if you remember this but Jason Begay specifically is so good because he's the guy who narrated the Sea Org slideshow.
He did?
Yes. A world gone mad. Remember that voice?
I didn't know that, yeah.
That's him.
Oh, that is him, isn't it?
Yeah, Jason Begay. I mean, his voice
I didn't know that.
Is kind of connected with the Sea Org. For a lot of us, it was because his voice was the voice of the...
that's why they stopped that slideshow.
Yes, that's right. They had a slideshow and they would tour it around and show off the charisma of the Sea Org. And this was a Hubbard advice. This is how to promote the Sea Org. Go around with this slideshow. And so they had designed a new one, I guess, in the 90s. And they used Jason Begay as the narrator because he's got a very distinct, gravelly voice. And it sounds kind of hardcore. Yeah. And they would use it to promote the Sea Org.
Right.
And so when
I think he was in a tech film too, wasn't he?
Oh yeah, he was in a couple of them.
Yeah.
So he was prominently...
Which they had to redo.
Yes.
This would happen. This would happen all the time. All of a sudden, there would be a tech film canceled, or not canceled, but like, oh, you can't show that anymore. I'd be like, why not? Oh, because blah blah's in it.
That's right. Right. That's right.
Like they had to. I couldn't believe they redid the Pro TRs. Oh my God, I was so mad. I was like, you can't redo that film.
That's right.
No, you can't do that.
That's right.
And I was like, why? Oh, because Dan Kuhn. I'm like, Dan Kuhn's gone? Oh, wow, interesting. Okay.
Exactly. That's how I felt when I found out about that. These are just things that exist in Scientology. They have films to train Scientologists and in how to be an auditor and stuff like that. And they would have prominent Scientology celebrities. Isaac Hayes has been in Scientology technical training films. Jason Begay was a bunch of Scientology celebs.
They don't use any prominent celebs anymore.
No, they don't.
They don't use anybody that you could ever recognize. They use just totally random.
Well, they hire non-Scientologists now too, right? And started doing that. Yeah. And sometimes they might try to make them Scientologists. Yeah. But they just hire stock actors now because of this problem where eventually they leave.
They would
Larry
leave,
Anderson.
And then they can't show the film anymore because they're ex-Scientologists.
That's right. That's right. So this was a real big problem. They were getting a lot of free or cheap, pro labor out of these guys. Yeah. And anyway, that all went by the wayside. That's a little bit of ancient history in Scientology, but it's just funny to then see them or hear them. I've watched Larry Anderson on video talk about Scientology. Jason Begay, and a couple others. So
wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I saw his video, and I saw there was a few that really impinged on me. There was one that Aaron did. You'll have to put a link on this one. That was Scientology in the Matrix.
Yeah, that was a good
and
one.
I saw that, and I was like, that is so true. Wow. Oh my God.
Yeah.
I think I watched it twice actually. I'm just like, oh my God, I can't believe this. And then there was another one, I forget which interview it was, again with Aaron, where he was talking about basically, if someone's anti-Scientology or doesn't agree with Scientology, doesn't want to be in Scientology anymore, they're automatically an SP, right?
Yep.
And it's not like you take the characteristics and you say, oh yeah, that fits. It's like, no, oh, you don't like Scientology, or you're not in Scientology, or whatever, you're against Scientology, you're automatically an SP. So he was saying how, no one's ever going to take the SP characteristics and tally me up on them. And I was like, that's true, actually. That's very true. And that's very interesting. And that doesn't seem right, because those are supposed to be the characteristics.
That's right. And yet you have an issue that calls antisocial personality and anti-Scientologist.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting once your eyes start opening to the contradictions.
Yeah.
Which is exactly what you're talking about, is you start becoming aware of these contradictions that have been in front of you the entire time. It's right there in the materials.
Yeah.
But we didn't read it that way, because we thought, oh no, that, you wouldn't even occur to you that there would be a negative way or a biased, horrible way of applying this information. We always apply it so beautifully.
Yeah, right.
Until it's pointed out to you how we don't. And you're like, oh shit, it actually doesn't say that, does it?
Yeah.
That business maybe one of the more extreme examples, I don't know if you remember, from Science of Survival, where he talks about the leper colony and how they just took them out in a barge and blew them up. And how basically that was pretty much the right thing to do.
Yeah.
Pretty much says that in the book. And you're like, and it just kind of gloss over. You're like, no, that's not really what he means, even though that's exactly what he says.
Yeah.
Just, it's very interesting.
Yeah, that's what you do with all the 1-1s, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Right. The world would be better off without them. Uh-huh. And that includes every single, according to L. Ron Hubbard, every single person in the LGBTQ band.
They took that out of the new Science of Survival.
What?
They took that line. They took that out. The part that talks about homosexuals being 1-1, they took it out of Science of Survival. Because I read the old Science of Survival. I read like 5 times trying to understand it, right?
Yeah.
So then when I read the new one, I was like, wow, they took it out. Interesting. Yeah.
I wonder if they updated Dianetics as well, because it's in there too.
I don't
I'll
remember.
have to check the latest editions and actually check this out.
Yeah, but they definitely took it out of Science of Survival.
Okay. Well, isn't that interesting? We knew it was coming.
Yeah.
It was just a matter of time. Because we keep talking about it. So there you go. Who's to say, one of the things I'm just going to say straight up, but just as a person who's been doing this for a lot of years, it's actually a little pleasing to me to hear that the things that we have been exposing are actually like being acted on. It's not like there's some hope for Scientology. Fuck that. But isn't it interesting that there actually is change in response to this?
And there's not like there was like an announcement about it. Oh, by the way, Science of Survival was updated. It just gets done and nobody says anything.
That's right. Quietly.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Suddenly it's just not there anymore. And in a culture where they are taking tech balls and policies and all kinds of stuff away, where it's a little haphazard as to how you access stuff, you can get away with stuff like that. Yeah. Right? Because nobody's really tracking what's going on.
Yeah. It's interesting, huh?
Yeah, very. Well, continuing right along here. So where were we?
So I was listening to all sorts of things while I was out. Right. And I was also, I came across, actually by accident, Aaron talking about the clear cognition. And this was completely by accident, because I was still afraid of like, oh, I can't, that's confidential. I'm gonna be messed up if I ever see that before I'm up to that and all that, which I totally do not believe anymore, because nothing happened to me. Nothing happened to every other person who's read this information before they're ready. And I don't ever plan on going that route anyway, because I don't see the point.
Yep.
So I came across this video where he talks about the clear cognition, and I was like, really? That's what it is? I am not impressed.
And I read that on the CCRD check sheet, so I can absolutely attest that what Aaron talks about is that's what it is.
Yeah. And it was interesting to me because at that point I had studied up through all the books, all the lectures that went with all the books. I was doing what's called the chronological study. So I was studying all the books, congresses, what's called the advanced clinical courses, which is just more lectures, congresses, which are lectures. But I was doing all this in sequence, and I was up to, I think the 7th or the 8th ACC. So I'd studied quite a bit by then.
Yeah, that is a lot. Basically, you were studying all of the books and lectures through 1956?
Yeah, that sounds about right. 55, 56.
Yeah, somewhere in there.
Yeah, because, no, because you have Dianetics. I wasn't up to Dianetics 55.
Oh, you weren't
probably
up
like
to
54. Yeah,
okay.
it was up to like 54.
Lots of material in there.
Yeah, there's tons.
Early days,
tons
of stuff. Yeah.
But it's also very repetitive, and he tells a lot of the same stuff and the same stories over and over and over and over and over and over, just in like different ways and whatever, right? And actually, all the stuff he talks about, you're just like, wow, this doesn't exist anymore. You don't hear about this anymore. You don't hear about this anymore. And I guess it's because you're back there and you're not up to the point where it's like, oh, well, the grades and the grade chart and
That's
whatever, right?
There was, in the 1950s, there was none of this stuff.
Yeah.
There was even a 2-year period where there were no e-meters being used.
That's right.
So you got all kinds of crazy shit going on in the 1950s as this thing sort of evolved into what it became, where it went from Dianetics as a science to this sort of pseudo-religious thing. A lot of people not on board with that, but Hubbard gradually worked them over or got new people in. And then they started working over this whole concept of clear. And that was what they spent the rest of the 1950s on.
Yeah.
And it wasn't really, modern Scientology emerged in the 1960s when Hubbard was in England, just to give the quick rundown on that. So listening to all the early stuff is fascinating.
Yeah, it's fascinating. And then when I heard this video that Aaron did on the clear cognition, I was like, okay, that's all it is. I mean, I basically already knew that. Like, you're mocking up your own shit. You're creating your own whatever, right?
Yep.
So I wasn't very impressed. So I was like, okay, well, now that I've seen that, and if I do decide to stay, I don't know if I'm ever going to do this. I'm like, I felt really weird after I'd seen that. I was just like, things were starting to like kind of, the whole thing was starting to just come apart. I was just like, no, I don't think so. I don't think I'm going to stay. So then,
I mean, all of this is so familiar to me. I totally hear you.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure.
It does. It feels like the seams are starting to show.
Yeah.
Like things are starting to pull apart a little bit.
Yeah, you're kind of like, what am I actually doing here?
Right.
And I was asking myself that for a long time. And plus, I just was, like I said before, I just was unhappy. Just personally, I'm just not happy. And I thought it'd be better going to Columbus, and it'd be like a new, fresh start. And it was just the same shit,
Right.
Same shit happening. Same, people being yelled at and whatever, and schedules all weird. And I mean, it wasn't that bad in Columbus, but like I say, I wasn't allowed to sleep after my major surgery. I wasn't allowed anyway. And that really didn't sit right with me. So I was doing a lot of that. Every time I was out, I would listen to more, and I would read more, and I would talk to my friend. And I was like, actually for several months, I was trying to decide like, what do I want to do? How do I want to do this? What the heck do I want to do? Like, cause if I say, okay, I want to leave the Sea Org, conditions, the whole thing, right? Plus I'd be sent back to LA. And I knew if I was sent back to LA, I sort of thought that somebody would probably handle me if I was sent back to LA. I'm like, no, it's if I go back to LA, it's all over. I'm not going.
Right.
So then I was like, okay, well, maybe I should just leave. Well, how do I do that? And at that point, I wasn't. I was still. I was disconnected from my mom and my sister because my mom was declared and whatever, right? And I hadn't wanted to reestablish that. As like my starting point of like, oh, hi, so I'm going to leave. Like it didn't work for me. Mm-hmm. So, and I have extended family, none of them are Scientologists. They're up in Minnesota. But I'm not close to any of them enough to be like, hi, can you come and pick me up?
Right.
Actually, the funny thing is one of my uncles was like, when I finally saw him, when I did leave, when I saw him after not seeing him for so long, he was like, wow, that's funny. Cause he's a truck driver. So he's like, wow, I go through Ohio all the time. I could have just picked you up. It was actually a really funny conversation. I was like, yeah, I didn't think of it. I hadn't talked to you in so long and whatever. Right.
Right.
It was just kind of funny. He's like, yeah, I was just driving through Columbus last month,
Exactly.
I was like, oh God. But so I was trying to decide what to do, and I was talking a lot to my friend, and he was trying to help me. And because he was also trying to understand, well, what does that mean if you go back to LA? Like, what's going to happen to you type thing. Because he didn't really understand what the Sea Org was and how things worked. And so I was sort of telling him some stuff, and it's hard to tell a new person and have them understand it. Right. Mm-hmm. So then there was a lot of back and forth on that. And then he was getting really concerned because he was starting to read some stuff online, which he didn't tell me about until much later. But he started checking out things online, and he started getting like freaked out, like for me, like he's like, oh, this is really not good. This is really, really, really not good. But he didn't want to tell me that he was doing any of that. And he didn't want to like scare me, or he didn't want to go that route. So he's being very careful with what he said to me. So then he actually found, there was a letter that my mom wrote in 2008. She wrote it to somebody in OSA and explained like what had happened between us, right? And was like asking for this to be resolved one way or another. And he found this letter online. So he found out exactly what I had told him what had happened, but not in like all the specifics that she did. So he found this letter online, and he took it, and he took each part of it, and he sent me this really long email, and he's like, and he lists, and he had it like broken down, and he just like says like one section of it, and he's like, is this true? Did this actually happen? No, nothing where I could like justify, oh, well, that was because blah, 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 blah. It was just like, no, did this happen? Did this happen? Did this happen? And I was finally like, yes, all this happened. So then he was very like, okay, you need to get out of there.
Wow.
Yeah. But not exactly in those words, but trying to get me to like come to that realization that I needed to get out of there.
Right.
Yeah. And I'm saying I want to leave, but I don't know how to do it. But it's just like, this is like going back and forth, kind of back and forth and trying to figure out what to do. And he's actually trying to figure out if he could like come and pick me up, because he's just over he's over in Philadelphia.
Okay.
So he's trying to figure that out, sort of, but he's kind of like, I don't know if I can do that.
Yeah, it's a little bit of an ask to drive a couple states over to pick somebody up.
Yeah. Plus, then what am I going to do?
Right. Exactly. So, what's the plan? What are you going to do?
Yeah.
Oh my God! Look at the time.
You're such a brat, Chris.
I am horrible. I am a horrible, awful person. I am the worst host ever. And I'm stopping this podcast right now because we are going to leave it on this cliffhanger, because part 3, which we will finish this whole narrative, we're going to get into your entire escape story, because clearly you escaped.
Yeah.
I can't tell you enough how hilarious it is to me that most of this was happening, most of your breakdown of your belief set, while you were out passing out promo. I think that's hilarious to me. It really is.
I really had to be sure. I really had to be sure what I was doing. Like, I was like, okay, if I'm going to completely change my life, I need to be completely sure. Plus, a really important point I want to say, one more thing, which is that I didn't want to leave in anger. Like, I didn't want to leave as like a reaction to something that happened. So I was trying to be in like a good mindset. I was actually doing really well on post. Like, we were like one of the best orgs on promo and book sales and everything. And I was doing pretty well the entire time I was there. I had this one thing happen with what I already told you, but that didn't turn into anything. And I was always doing really well on post I never wanted to leave as like a reaction. There were many times when I was upset and whatever, and over the years, but I never wanted to be like, oh, this is bullshit, and just go.
Interesting.
Because I knew I would just kind of stick on that point. So I'm like, I'm not going to leave like that. So if I'm going to leave, it's It's going to be totally my decision, completely my decision. I'm not going to talk to anybody else about it, except I ended up talking to this person who was key, actually.
Yep.
Very key to talk to, because otherwise it just would have been going in my own head. And
exactly.
I don't think I wouldn't have made it out if that would have been the case.
That is interesting. That is interesting. I actually will push back a little bit, because I think your headspace was getting to a place where it was going to be kind of that was going to be the conclusion no matter what, but the time factor.
Yeah.
You know, it took me years.
Yeah.
And, you know, from first, what the fuck?
Yeah.
It was 10 years.
Oh my God.
Until I got out.
I mean, I was saying what the fuck from the day I started at the Sea Org practically. I was saying, what have I gotten into?
Yeah.
Okay, and just kind of roll with it. But I rolled with it a little bit too long.
Well, that's the thing is I'm a slow learner. I am horrible. The truth is I was really very, 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 very committed to this cause. And I really bought into all the bullshit about how it's your responsibility.
Yeah.
Right. And if you're failing, it's on you.
Yeah.
And, you know, fuck you very much. Right. Figure your shit out. And I just kind of rolled with that for a long, long time. And it wasn't until it took an RPF to break me of that thinking. But that was not the intended consequence or product of the RPF.
Right.
That's why I'm an overt product of the RPF. Hi, Osa.
I don't know. I'm not an overt product of anything. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. That's what they told me.
Don't have anything against me.
That's what they told me. You're an overt product of your RPF. Yeah. I fuck you very much.
Well, it doesn't exist anymore. So what are you supposed to do about that?
Yeah, exactly. Put me back on it. Okay, so we're wrapping up tonight. Yeah. All right, guys. So with all of that, I hope that you have enjoyed this very complete second part. We got a lot here for you. And this has been an amazing story. And I mean, really, it's been quite something. So, and impressive, you know, because the thing is that once, I think we're showing so many things that we've talked about over the years here in terms of once the dam starts breaking, once the critical thinking, it can get back in there and get going, you know, because there's just years where we just really weren't thinking.
Yeah.
We were just complying.
Yeah. You just kind of roll with it.
Yeah. And you just put up with shit.
And you keep thinking that things are going to get better.
Exactly.
You're like, oh yeah, this is going to be the thing. Things are going to get better. And then maybe it's a little bit better for a little while. And then it's just sucks again.
That's right. And I think in a way, having been on staff and the Sea Org through the new Pro TRs back in 1990, Key to Life. I was a delivery guy for that. That was supposed to change the planet. The new era management, the golden age of tech, the golden age of knowledge, right? Golden age of knowledge part 2. Blah, blah, blah. Like ideal orgs.
Yeah.
And ideal orgs was the last straw for me because this has been, failed program after failed program after failed, meaning this was supposed to be the big release that was going to blow the socks off everybody and change Scientology forever. And the whole world was going to come knocking on our door. And nothing ever produced that result.
Yeah. So they do a big grand opening and there's a bunch of people in there for like a day and then everybody's gone and it's the same size it was when you started. It's just they have a big building that they have to take care of now.
Exactly.
With like one staff member per square mile or something.
That's right.
I was thinking of Valley actually specifically.
Yeah. Well, Valley was just this monstrosity of a building.
Yeah.
I remember when they got that building and it was just like, you're going to do what? Yeah. I mean, because Valley was as podunk as it comes, right? This is San Fernando Valley in California.
Yeah.
It's actually one of the closest orgs to the management units out there. And it's
like nothing.
Pathetic place.
Yeah.
So, okay. Anyway, so we're going on and on here. Yeah. So we will be wrapping this up next week. We're going to get this thing done. And somehow, some way, we're going to do that.
Yeah.
And we will finish up your story.
Alrighty.
All right, guys. Thanks for coming around and watching this. And of course, if you're finding the show entertaining, informative, and educational, then consider supporting the channel through Patreon, Venmo, PayPal, etc. Thanks, guys. See you next week. Bye-bye.